2 minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Forty-five seconds remaining. Seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
He's live. He's nationwide on CBS Sports Radio. This is the Zach Gelb Show. Here's your host, Zach Gelb.
Live from the place yet not overly ostentatious studios of CBS Sports Radio here in beautiful New York City, sitting on top of the 10th floor of 345 Hudson Street. Welcome on in to a Tuesday edition of the Zach Gelb Show across all the great local CBS Sports Radio affiliates, Sirius XM, Channel 158, the free Odyssey app, and of course streaming live on YouTube, youtube.com/CBS Sports Radio. 855-212-4CBS, the number to jump on in, 855-212-4227. You could always get at me on Instagram where I'm straight flexing, or via the good old cesspool of Twitter at Zach Gelb. That's ZACHGELB. Got Moist Mike and Stuart Kovacs rocking and rolling with me all the way up until 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific. Former Philadelphia Eagle Hugh Douglas is going to stop by an hour 20 from now. We start the show with maybe the biggest disgrace in football right now, and that's the Philadelphia Eagles. The Philadelphia Eagles need to fire Nick Sirianni. You start a season 10-1, and you finish down the stretch 1-6, and your players quit on you, and there's turmoil and problems and chaos in the locker room. You don't recover from that. I don't care that he's been the coach for 3 years and they've been to the playoffs 3 times and he coached in a Super Bowl last year. It does not matter. When you waste a season like that and your players quit on the season and you get rolled over in a playoff game 32-9 up against an average at best Tampa Bay Buccaneers team, you simply do not recover from that. And the biggest problem with Nick Sirianni is he's a player's coach, but he's a player's coach that's a doormat. I don't care what Hassan Reddick, I don't care what A.J. Brown say about him, and give him a vote of confidence. The players simply don't fear Nick Sirianni. The offensive coordinator was a disgrace. The players can't tackle on the defensive side of the ball. That was a pathetic performance last night. And there's many environments where you could keep your job and you get to the playoffs 3 times in 3 years, and you could have a team quit on you and you'll get a 4th year. And you could kind of fade into being irrelevant. But not in Philadelphia. Because Philadelphia fans get a bad reputation. But the reason why Philadelphia fans are so tough and so tough on their teams is because they expect a certain standard. And when you don't reach that standard, you're going to hear it. And it's one thing to be bad, but it's another thing to quit. And those players quit. Those players quit, whether it's because they don't like each other in the locker room, they don't like the offensive coordinator, they don't like whatever defensive coordinator they put out there the last 2 months. I don't care what the reasons are. When you have a team that has that much talent, and you have a team that started 10-1, and there were signs they weren't as good as last year, to finish the season with only one lousy win down the stretch is ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. I don't care if A.J. Brown didn't play in the game last night. You have Dallas Goedert, you got Devontae Smith, you got DeAndre Swift, you got Jalen Hurts. What the heck has happened to him? You have one of the preeminent offensive lines in football. You got some talent on defense, but what the heck happened to that talent? James Bradbury's now trash all of a sudden? Like, that's a joke. An absolute joke. All we heard about was this defensive line. Man, that defense, they couldn't tackle at all. You know, I don't say this lightly. I don't pretend to be a football player, but I think we could put Stu in the backfield last night, and he could have broke 2 or 3 tackles. How do you not tackle? It's simple, fundamental football. And you know what? I know because of the CBA now, you aren't allowed to be as physical as you've been in years past. But Dan Campbell puts the pads on more than most teams do. And look at his team. His team's playing for a spot in the NFC title game. But this Eagles team, lethargic, putrid, pathetic. And how you'll remember them, the 2023 Philadelphia Eagles? Quitters. They're quitters. That's what they are. And when the players quit and the locker room quits and they just lie flat on the ground and allow the Buccaneers bus to drag them up and down the field, the coach can't be back. He can't. I don't give a rat's ass that this coach has exceeded expectations. Everyone thought he was a bozo when he was hired. Everyone was like, who the heck is this? I don't care that he's made the playoffs 3 times in 3 years. I don't care that he was coaching in the Super Bowl last year. It does not matter. You don't get to continue because of what you did in the past. It's how we project you will do in the future. And there is no way, even with all the talent that they have in Philly, it's a big, fat 0% chance that Nick Sirianni will win a Super Bowl in Philadelphia. You just don't recover from this performance that your team put on the field, not only last night, but in the final 7 games of the season. 1-6 down the stretch. What a joke. What an embarrassing performance. And this team just simply has no heart. How do you not have any heart? How do you not have any pride in what you do? You know, it's a shame. That's Jason Kelsey's last game last night. He's one of the hardest workers in the NFL. He's one of the more enjoyable people to watch and root for in the NFL. He's one of the leaders of your team, and no one else. Everyone knew before the game that was it for Kelsey, that he was playing in his final games, and maybe you get him to next week. But now you don't even go down without a fight. How do you look yourself in the mirror? That's a grotesque performance. It was a comedy show last night. But no one should be surprised by it, because you've seen signs for weeks now with this Eagles team. Whether it's A.J. Brown sulking on the sidelines, Hassan Reddick yelling at the coaching staff, Devontae Smith yelling at the coaching staff. A.J. Brown, I get it. But for Devontae Smith and Hassan Reddick, that's out of character for those guys. Those guys knew that this team wasn't going to reach where they were supposed to go. Desai, Patricia, it doesn't matter who's calling plays on defense. That defense sucks. It's terrible. And on offense, what the heck is this offensive coordinator Brian Johnson doing? How many times am I going to watch this game and you're going to throw a screen pass when you shouldn't, and then you get to 3rd and 2 and you air it out? You go for 40 yards down the field? Whether that's Jalen Hurts improvising on his own or it's a bad play calling, I don't care. You can't have that happen. You just can't have that happen. And don't tell me this team doesn't have enough talent. This was a team, there's not a lot of major changes outside of the coordinators, which is a big one. No more Jonathan Gannon, which every Eagles fan hated last year. Heck, maybe they needed Jonathan Gannon. No more Shane Steichen, who's now coaching the Colts. I get it. They lost both coordinators. But when you lose both coordinators and you still start the season 10-1, you can't be a team that finishes the year with only 11 wins. You can't be bowing out in the first round. You know what? I don't even say the Eagles qualify for the postseason this year. Now, I don't even think this team did qualify for the postseason this year. They made the playoffs, right? You know, Zach, you're going to say, oh, they played in the game last night, but did they? That team, I bet you if you go look at the vacation calendars, about 90% of the team already had their tee times booked for next week, or their resorts already booked, and their plane and their airfare and their travel already booked. Because everyone in that locker room, if they have a brain, they would know that that team had no shot in the game. And that's a problem because they got talent on that team. They have too much talent on that team. Lazy quitters. That's what the Eagles are. Lazy quitters. What a joke. And the only thing I disagree with was the dopey Eagle fan last night that threw a bucket of popcorn at Nick Sirianni. You can't be doing that. I will never condone that. But about 99.9% of the other things that Eagles fans will give this team today, it's well-deserved. Because you lose in a Super Bowl last year, when you're up by 10 points and you can't finish the job, it was all about getting back to the playoffs this year and finding a way to hoist the Lombardi trophy. And you had the team that could have done it. But the moment a little adversity hits you in the face, you bow down and you tap out. Disgusting. That's disgusting. And I watched the game last night with about 6 or 7 Eagles fans. And before the game, every single one of them said, well, we're going to the funeral tonight. Right? We're in sports hospice. We know the body's about to go. We know the team's about to die. And that team showed zero fight. Mystifying how a team last year that was so likable, a team last year that was so great, a team last year, it didn't matter what the score or situation was. You believed in them. In a 10-1 start, it was, they're not playing that well, but come on, guys, they're 10-1 off a Super Bowl loss. Then they got punched in the mouth by the 49ers. They showed no heart the next week up against the Cowboys. And then you lost to Drew Lock. Drew Lock went 92 yards down the field and punched you right in the mouth. And he ended your season. I got on the air that next day. I said the Eagles are cooked. The Eagles are done. Because you could go through a stretch where you lose back-to-back games. But when you lose back-to-back-to-back games and you just get eviscerated by the 49ers and the Cowboys, and then you can't even beat Drew Lock, you ain't going anywhere. And you know what? The Eagles actually did us a favor quitting, because I would be sick to my stomach, and I'm not even an Eagles fan, but I would be sick to my stomach having to watch that team another week. When you quit, when you tap out, and you go down without a fight. What a joke. What a joke. And I lived in Philly for 8 years. I understand the city. Those fans deserved better. And that team could be one of the biggest jokes in Philadelphia sports history. You know, my great uncle Ben, diehard Philadelphia sports fan. Still to this day, he's 92, 93 years old. He will rant about the fold in 64 with the 1964 Phillies. He said this team more embarrassing than the 1964 Phillies. Think about that for a second. Think about that. And you know what? Jalen Hurts, you got to change. I thought Jalen Hurts was the definition of a leader. I thought Jalen Hurts was the heartbeat of that team. And I was believing big time with Jalen Hurts last year. This year, it's one thing when you're banged up and you're playing through pain. I respect that. Knee injury, middle finger injury. I respect that. But you're supposed to be the leader. You're supposed to have the answers. And how many times did you see him the last few weeks just sulking on the sideline with teammates yelling at him and Jalen Hurts had no answer for it? Sirianni's got to go. He has to go. And Jeffrey Lurie, you are the owner of the team. You need to do what's in the best interest of your team. I don't care when you and Howie Roseman, you look at Sirianni as a puppet and you could control him and you could pull the strings with Nick Sirianni. There is no coming back from this. There is no justification to have that man as your head coach next year. What does he do well? Seriously. His coordinators suck. His players don't play hard for him. And they look at him like he's a doormat and they walked all over him. And he was never able to regroup this team. There are moments in sports where even when you look like you're a good coach and even when you have the wins, when there are certain ways a season plays out or a certain game that you just don't recover from it. And you already paid the quarterback, so the quarterback's not going anywhere. You got to get rid of the coach. There are too many good coaching candidates out there for you to continue with this guy. Belichick, Carroll, Harbaugh, Vrabel would all be instant upgrades over Nick Sirianni. Let me play you a little Nick Sirianni. This is the head coach of the Eagles on the pathetic, embarrassing collapse that the Eagles had this season.
We'll all have to look ourselves in the mirror and accept that and, just find answers, find solutions. But obviously, when you start 10-1, and then you get into what happened for us, obviously that the expectations were high.
No crap, the expectations were high. You were 10-1 for crying out loud, and your team won one game down the stretch. Yeah, you'll look yourself in the mirror. Jeffrey Lurie knows a damn clue how to run a football team. He'd fire your ass today. And then you go reflect in the offseason and figure out what your next job is. Here is Jalen Hurts on the rumors that Nick Sirianni might get fired.
I didn't know he was going anywhere.
Well, there's obviously a lot of questions about whether...
I didn't know that.
You didn't know that?
Nah.
Where's your confidence level in him then to fix this team?
I have a ton of confidence in everyone in this building. It's just a matter of us going out there and playing clean football. And that's been something that we have not done,
Yeah, it doesn't really sound all that convincing. Because we just know, and we could just speculate what some of the problems are. It's already come out a little bit. The entire thing will come out this offseason, and we will find out what really happened in that locker room. It's players fighting with players fighting with coaches. When you are a coach and a CEO of a franchise, it's fair not to hold you responsible. You get paid a lot of money to do that job. You have to prevent the ship from sinking. You have to find a way through some tough times to be able to find some smooth water to sail on. And Nick Sirianni couldn't do that. And he deserves now to he shouldn't even got back on the flight last night. You should have went Lane Kiffin on him and just left him right at the airport, right on the tarmac. It is the Zach Gelb Show on CBS Sports Radio, 855-212-4CBS, 855-212-4227. Should the Eagles fire Nick Sirianni? That's the poll question today at Zach Gelb at CBS Sports Radio. Right now, overwhelming majority, 79.5% say yes, 20.5% say no. I would love to hear today from the people that say no, because I don't understand how you could justify keeping Nick Sirianni after his team quit on him and quit on each other. Coming on back.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. 4 minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Forty-five seconds remaining. Thirty seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
The Zach Gelb Show is on the air across the nation on CBS Sports Radio.
Baker today deserves his flowers. He deserves his respect. And I'm not telling you Baker is this great elite quarterback, but I don't think Baker Mayfield is this bum. That was my part of the final year in Cleveland. Didn't mean he was going to fall off a cliff. And everyone wrote off the Bucs before the start of the season because they didn't have Tom Brady anymore. But Tampa Bay, they have everything right there for the taking.
Here's Zach Gelb.
Congratulations to the Buccaneers as Wild Card Weekend does wrap up last night as the Eagles didn't even need to get off the plane, didn't even need to get off the bus because they just quit in one of the more pathetic performances and pathetic ends to a season that I've ever seen. It is the Zach Gelb Show on CBS Sports Radio. Now, I want to congratulate the Bucs because Todd Bowles had a terrible tenure in New York. Baker Mayfield had to bounce around after getting dumped in Cleveland. He goes to Carolina, didn't work out. The staff gets fired a few games into the season. He goes to L.A. with the Rams, had a little bit of success in the last, 2 or 3 games of the season when Sean McVay just said, let it rip. And then this offseason, he winds up in Tampa Bay, following after and trying to replace Tom Brady. And everyone just looked at the Buccaneers. We're like, okay, the Panthers are going to stink. The Saints, they're expected to win the division, but I didn't think they would win the division. I was hot on Atlanta just as long as they allowed Desmond Ridder to be a game manager. Arthur Smith tried to make him like a franchise quarterback and forgot about guys like Algier and Bijan Robinson really being the bread and butter to that team. And Tampa Bay, they got up to a good start. Then they had a down stretch of the season and a down period of the season, but then they got hot at the right time. And they knew even, that second to last game of the season that it didn't really matter because you had the Panthers in your back pocket the last week of the season, that they were going to win the NFC South. And their defense is good. You still have guys like Antoine Winfield Jr., Levante David, who's been there forever, Devin White as well, even though he had like a 2-week stretch where there were some problems, and he got benched and he was inactive. Vita Vea still this unmovable force in the middle of that defense. Like, there are solid players. Yaya Diaby, the rookie, there are really solid players on the defensive side. And then offensively, I know we had a big drop last night, but Mike Evans is a stud. Chris Godwin is a stud. And Baker Mayfield gained the trust of that locker room going back to the summer with just the way that he conducted himself. And no one's going to sit here today and say that Baker Mayfield's great. No one's going to sit here today and say Todd Bowles is great. But all you had to be was above average, and you'd win the NFC South. But just winning the NFC South would have been a good accomplishment for the Bucs, and they did that, especially first year without Tom Brady. And not only did they do that, now they're going to play in the divisional round weekend up against Detroit. And it's funny how quickly I've already moved on to divisional weekend. I've already placed one wager. I saw that the Lions were laying 6 points. I didn't care what the number was. As much as I respect what Tampa Bay has done this year, I laid the number last night right when that line came out at 6 points in favor of Detroit. Because either one of those teams that would have won last night, the pathetic quitting Philadelphia Eagles or the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who've had a surprisingly good season, I don't think either of those teams, even with how good Tampa Bay's defense can be, is going to be able to keep up with the offense and the way that it's clicking on all cylinders inside that building, home field advantage that Detroit has right now. So I'll tell you one pick already, and I'll leave the other 3 in mystery by the time we get to Football Friday a few days from now and we give you the picks with Horvat. I've already laid the number with the Lions minus 6 points next week as they will host the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But the big takeaway from last night is just what a joke, what a disgrace, and what an embarrassing performance that was from the Philadelphia Eagles. And you'll learn this about me. 2 things that really set me off. It's when people don't hold themselves accountable and take ownership of their shortcomings. And then also when you're playing a game that so many people love and you just spit in the faces of the fans pretty much and you just quit on a season. And that's the thing. Like, as bad as it got for the Eagles, it should have never got to this point. They were 10-1. They had a 10-1 head start, even with some adversity. And to finish that lousy season 1-6 down the stretch, there's no justification for it. And I know there's multiple people to blame. When you have a problem like that, it's not just one person. But in this business, 9 times out of 10, the coach has to be held accountable. And that's why I'm on the fire Sirianni train. I just don't think he recovers from this. 855-212-4CBS, 855-212-4227. Let's start things off. Chris in California, first up on CBS Sports Radio. Chris, what's shaking?
Hey, what's going on, man? Hey, I won't take too much of your time. Howie Roseman messed this team up back in 2022. After the Carson Wentz thing, I could tell you this much: Carson Wentz was a done deal. But 2022, Howie Roseman messed that draft up. Not once, but twice he passed up on this player. Pittsburgh is taking full advantage of him, benching him, whatever. Jeffrey Lurie, go get Kenny Pickett. Go get him.
Chris, are you okay today? You hang up because, all right, I've done this enough. Chris is one of those guys that I bet you he's called not only this show, but about 6 or 7 other shows, and he's going to make the case for Kenny Pickett. I don't care if you hate Jalen Hurts. Kenny Pickett will never accomplish anything close to what Jalen Hurts did last year. Kenny Pickett, when he got hurt, got replaced by Mason Rudolph, and surprise, surprise, the Steelers started to have some offensive success. Like, Chris, also, if you're going to do a hit and run, like, we're not forcing you to leave. Like, let's sit around and let's play around a little bit, and we'll just make you then want to hang up because you'll have no response when we actually argue that. Kenny Pickett. Jeez. Like, Jalen Hurts, even though he had a horrible year this year, and he looked lost, and his leadership was called under question this year, and deservedly so. Jalen Hurts played MVP ball last year. Jalen Hurts got the Eagles to a Super Bowl. And this year, there was a stretch where Jalen Hurts did garner some MVP conversation. But if that is your brainiac take today, go get Kenny Pickett. And that's your big prank phone call. Like, come up with a better name, please. All righty? Just come up with a better name. And I bet you Chris has small hands just like Kenny Pickett. That's why he probably couldn't hold on to the phone too long, and the phone fell right out of his hand, and that's why he got disconnected. Anyway, let's get to Bill Belichick, who I think the Eagles should be seriously interested in. And I think the Eagles should also seriously be interested in Pete Carroll. I think they should seriously be interested in Jim Harbaugh, and they should seriously be interested in Mike Vrabel. But Bill Belichick, ever since getting fired from the New England Patriots, and that's the way that I'm just going to say it. You know, I hate this society now where when someone gets let go of, from their job or they move on from their job, we all have to say, oh, they're amicably parting ways. I can guarantee you this. There was nothing amicable between Robert Kraft and Bill Belichick at the end of that tenure. Bill Belichick didn't want to get fired. Robert Kraft wanted significant changes from Bill Belichick, and Bill Belichick is stubborn, and he wasn't willing to listen. And don't give me this bull crap when they were at the podium saying their goodbyes, that Robert Kraft had to say, oh, Bill is sick, that's why I'm not going to kiss him. Come on. I don't care if Bill was perfectly healthy. He was not puckering up and going smoochy with Robert Kraft on the cheek. If that was Brady, different story. Brady may even kiss you on the lips. But Bill Belichick, he's not kissing Robert Kraft. So Belichick leaves New England, gets fired from New England. You know, I wonder how hot of a commodity he is going to be. Because with Belichick, we know you're getting the greatest coach of all time. But then when you get to the other side of it, does Bill still want to be the GM? And in Atlanta, where the place he interviewed yesterday, Terry Fontenot did not get relieved of his duties. It was only the head coach, deservedly so, in Arthur Smith. So I think there needs to be some understanding from Bill that in Atlanta, you'd be coaching the team. But I also don't think it was really the Falcons interviewing Belichick. It was probably more so Belichick interviewing the Falcons, because Arthur Blank, according to all reports, will do whatever it takes in his power to go land Bill Belichick. And I don't think Belichick going to the Falcons would be this bad reaction. And I don't think it would be a bad destination. Now, I don't think you're winning a Super Bowl in Atlanta. I don't. But you could win that NFC South next year because you know Bill will have a good defense. Heck, they don't have a lot of talent in New England this year. They lost their two best defensive players, Matthew Judon and Christian Gonzalez. And Christian Barrymore was probably their best defensive player. He was at least healthy. And that defense was pretty damn good week in and week out. So you know Belichick will coach up the defense that improved last year under a first-year defensive coordinator. It's what's going to happen on offense. And the Patriots had nothing on offense this past year. Nothing. But even with the Falcons, who don't have a quarterback right now, because Desmond Ritter's not going to be a successful starting quarterback in the NFL. Taylor Heineke's good for about like 2 or 3 games, but nothing more than that. You know that you have playmakers on that offensive side of the ball outside the quarterback position. You have Bijan Robinson. You have Tyler Algier. You have Kyle Pitts. You have Drake London, who's a stud. As long as you could get a game manager or an above-average quarterback, I think the Falcons could win that division with Belichick. You know, would Kirk Cousins want to go there? You know, is that a Russell Wilson destination? Do you maybe trade up in the draft and you get a quarterback or take a quarterback where you currently sit in the draft? I don't know. But when I look at the Falcons, I don't think for Bill, and I know the goal is to win a Super Bowl, but just to kind of restore the way that some people are talking about you and show that, hey, you could still coach at an elite level and still get a team to the playoffs, I think there's an easy road for the hoodie to go get the Falcons to the playoffs. Maybe they go trade for Justin Fields if the Bears are going to trade Fields. Atlanta would be a hot destination too. But now you got the Cowboys open. Now you got the Eagles open. Like, those rosters are superior compared to the Atlanta Falcons. And the Eagles had a great year. Then their coach lost all order in the locker room. You look at the Cowboys, they've been good for the last 3 years, but they need someone else to get them over the finish line and make them great. I know that McCarthy hasn't done it yet. Hasn't been fired yet. I know Sirianni hasn't been fired yet. Jerry Jones and also Jeffrey Lurie haven't made a decision. I think they'd be crazy not to bring in Bill Belichick for 3 or 4 years. But there's a lot of coaches out there, man. There are. All these rumors with Harbaugh, going to stay at Michigan, go to the Chargers. You got Vrabel, who got Tennessee to a 1 seed at one point, also got them to an AFC championship game. We know Pete Carroll has won in college, has won in the pros. And then you got Belichick with the 6 rings as well. It's going to be a fascinating coaching search. Let me take one more before the break. 855-212-4CBS, 855-212-4227. Let's go to Dave in Miami. He wants to talk a little bit about Belichick. Dave, go ahead.
I love your show, man. You should call it the Zach Attack.
We'll just call it the Zach Gelb Show. We'll keep it moving,
Yeah. I love your show, man.
Appreciate it.
I want to talk about Belichick and dynasty and legacy. I think Belichick wants to be known more for his success in New England. And when I talk about legacy, we go back to when Jordan left the Bulls and went to Washington. He's remembered for both, but he's also remembered for the failure. I think Belichick wants to be more like a Sparky Anderson, win in both leagues, and then go out and say, well, he was able to do it somewhere else. Thanks, Mr. Gelb. Have a good show.
Yeah, Dave, I appreciate it. Well, just look at Brady. Brady won a Super Bowl with Tampa Bay. When we talk about Tom Brady in 20 years, the first 3 things out of the mouth of when talking about Tom Brady is going to mention the Buccaneers. It's all going to be about his time in New England. No one talks about Michael Jordan's time with the Wizards. It's always about the 6 championships with the Bulls, and I know Jordan did nothing with the Wizards. For Belichick, I know it's in the moment now that people are trashing him and people are taking their victory laps because he kicked your ass for 20 years. 15, 20 years from now, regardless of what happens in the next chapter of Bill Belichick, when people say the first 3 memories of Bill, it's not going to be about wherever his next destination is. It's always going to be about the 6 championships in New England. That's the same for Tom Brady. It's the same for Bill Belichick. All righty, we'll take a time out here on the Zach Gelb Show on CBS Sports Radio. Do you think the Eagles should fire Nick Sirianni? 855-212-4CBS, 855-212-4227. I think absolutely. When we take a break and come on back from that break, Michigan has a little stipulation from Jim Harbaugh as they try to iron out a new deal. Do you believe it? Do you think Michigan will get Harbaugh back, or is he off to the pros? We'll discuss. Update time first. Here is the Ackman, Rich Ackerman.
CBS Sports Radio. Sports Flash.
And this report is sponsored by Progressive Insurance. Looking for a career path with flexibility and great pay and benefits? Then go to progressive.com/careers and apply online today. There are 5 centers with at least 6 All-Pro seasons. 4 are in the Hall of Fame. Jason Kelce will join them someday. The Eagles standout is going to retire after 13 seasons in the NFL, all in Philadelphia. He told his teammates following last night's wild card loss of his decision. Kelce had contemplated the move after previous seasons, but now it appears he is finished. A changing of the guard in New Orleans. Dennis Allen is staying, but offensive coordinator Pete Carmichael is reportedly out. He had been on the staff for 18 years since Sean Payton came aboard in New Orleans. Arizona has hired San Jose State's Brent Brennan as its new coach. He had finished second to Jed Fish for the job just 3 years ago. 3 games in the NBA tonight. The Kings will take on the Suns in Phoenix this evening, while the Sixers will host Denver after getting 41 points and 10 rebounds from Joel Embiid last night in a win, and the Thunder face the Clippers in L.A. after falling to the Lakers last night. I'm Rich Ackerman.
Hey, this is Bart Winkler. I've got a new show weeknights. Join me for the Bart Winkler Show starting at 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific, only on CBS Sports Radio.
CBS Sports Radio.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Five seconds remaining. Thirty seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
The Zach Gelb Show is on the air across the nation on CBS Sports Radio.
I don't care what signs you had or you didn't have. Michigan showed they didn't need them. So just stop with the commentary. Just stop with the jackassery. Oh, this championship shouldn't count. Everything was even in these last 4 or 5 games, and Michigan still found a way to hoist the national championship trophy. Enough is enough.
Here's Zach Gelb.
All righty, Zach Gelb Show, CBS Sports Radio. We'll get to Jim Harbaugh's future in just a second. The Defensive Player of the Week is sponsored by the Navy Federal Credit Union, who proudly serves the armed forces, DoD veterans, and their families. Their members are the mission. Learn more at NavyFederal.org. This week's player is Texans linebacker Christian Harris in Saturday's 45-14 win over the Browns. Harris had 8 tackles, a sack, and a 36-yard pick six. As a team, the Texans forced Cleveland into 2 turnovers and held them to 0 for 4 on 4th down attempts. So congratulations to the Texans, as that's going to be a good game this weekend. You get Lamar Jackson, right, established, going to win his 2nd MVP, one of the more electrifying players in the sport. Ravens 1 seed, look like the best team in football, and they're going to welcome in this young Houston team that has no fear, has nothing to lose, and C.J. Stroud has already emerged. I said this yesterday, I'll say it again, as a top 5 quarterback in the NFL. Like, in no order, we know Mahomes is a top 5 quarterback. We know Joe Burrow, when healthy, is a top 5 quarterback. Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, that 5th spot, you could debate it right now. Going into next season, without seeing how this season comes to a close, I would say C.J. Stroud would be the 5th best quarterback entering football next year. But before we get into more of the conversation about how the Eagles should fire Nick Sirianni, Belichick interviews with the Falcons, right, yet Harbaugh yesterday, interview with the LA Chargers, Kelly Stafford has really become insufferable. And I don't usually like to talk about players' wives or players' significant others. I don't. And I had no reason to dislike Kelly Stafford before this. I actually was a fan of Kelly Stafford, which is kind of like a crazy story when you're saying you're the fan of a player's wife, but I think her podcast is good. We know that, unfortunately, she's had to overcome a lot in life, and you wish her nothing but the best. But you're going into a playoff game in Detroit. And I did think that the Lions fans before the game, I never even thought about Kelly Stafford, but when Matthew Stafford took the field, they would cheer him before the game. And then once the ball is kicked off into the air, he's the enemy. You're trying to win a playoff game for the first time since 1991, and you would boo him, because it's not like you're booing him, but you're booing the opposition, which are the LA Rams. But after the game, like, Stafford was asked 3,000 times, "Are you happy for Lions fans?" And he basically just said, I obviously wanted to win, but I'm happy for the guys in the other locker room. Never once gave any credit to the fans or said, I love my time in Detroit here for all those years, and, it's a fan base that deserves so much, and I hope they go all the way this year, and good for Lions fans that sat through a lot of bad years. So, whatever, like, you could tell Stafford was probably annoyed that he got booed, but it is what it is. And then yesterday, Kelly Stafford is trying to play like the victim card here, where she's like, "Oh, I'm with my girls. Maybe you shouldn't be booing me when I'm with my children." Like, I understand fans can be savages at time, but no one's booing your children. And I don't even get why fans would boo her, but it's a hostile environment. It's a playoff game. You have a fan base that has the longest playoff drought without having a victory. Of course they're going to boo the opposition. And as good as Matthew Stafford was as the quarterback of the Lions, and he's a borderline, at best, Hall of Famer, at best. I'm not even ready to say that he is a Hall of Famer yet. And this is not like it's Tom Brady coming back to town, all right, with 6 championships. All right, you didn't really, I know that Detroit screwed you left and right, but it's not like you really won anything in Detroit. And I know that's more the organization's fault than it is for Matthew Stafford. But come on, Kelly Stafford. Like, we all know you're looking for clicks for your podcast, and you're trying to play a victim card here. I'm not saying I condone booing the Staffords. Maybe there's more to this story than we know. Like, I thought that divorce was all warm and fuzzy, right? All the Lions fans were rooting for Stafford when he got to the Super Bowl. But when you're on the verge of winning your first playoff game since 1991, I can't really fault fans for booing Matthew Stafford and Kelly Stafford before the game. And to use like the whole, oh, but I'm with my daughters, maybe you shouldn't do that. Like, so what? You walk on the field. We all saw the video. They boo you. What are you crying about now? You know, for a while, I think Brittany Mahomes got the tag of being like the most insufferable player's wife. I've actually eased up the last 2 years on Brittany Mahomes. Like when she's yelling into the camera and going nuts, it is a little insufferable. She has a bad screech. But this year with Taylor Swift, and maybe I'm in the minority here, and I'm sure people will hate me for this, I actually find Brittany Mahomes this year to be likable. I don't find Jackson Mahomes to be likable. I think he's a creep. But Brittany Mahomes, I thought this past year, has turned into someone that is likable. Or as likable as she could get. But like Kelly Stafford now, there was no reason to dislike her before. But now, with the way that she's conducted herself, trying to play this victim card the last 24 to 48 hours, like, come on. Going after Lions fans, like, why are you doing that? Now, this should be a happy moment for Lions fans. They beat your husband. It's unfortunate for you. I get it. You want to win the game. I'll never fault someone for supporting their significant other, but this is just a stupid fight that the Staffords are now trying to start with the city of Detroit. 855-212-4CBS, 855-212-4227. Let me take Daniel in Florida, wants to talk a little bit about Belichick. Daniel, go ahead.
Hey, how's it going today? Actually, I have thoughts on Vrabel and Belichick. First of all, Vrabel, I do believe that the Eagles would be the ideal destination for him. Clearly, the Eagles locker room completely had no respect for Nick Sirianni down the stretch. Didn't hold anybody accountable. They walked all over him, and Vrabel could come in there and really insert some accountability right away. You know, he's definitely the tough guy, leadership that the Eagles need. May need to trade A.J. Brown again, seeing how what happened between them and Tennessee, but I think he'd be a
but Vrabel didn't want A.J. Brown traded. That was on the GM Robinson. Vrabel wanted him to get paid, so I actually think even though A.J. Brown has had some problems this year, and it's been a pattern, if there's a coach to fix him, it would be Vrabel.
Oh, well, there you go. Okay, that makes sense as well. And then Belichick, Cowboys makes perfect sense. You know, Jerry Jones obviously wants something quick to happen, and I can see Belichick reaching out to Josh McDaniels and saying, "Hey, you're making the run at the Super Bowl." I mean, we know that McDaniels is an unmitigated disaster as a head coach, but as an OC, very successful. So I can see them turning that around really quickly. Belichick making that defense, you know, the Doomsday 2.0, and then Josh McDaniels put in a package to really hit the best out of Dak and the team. I think it'd be a really quick turnaround. I mean, they become Super Bowl contenders pretty much overnight with those two working together again. So that's my thoughts. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it, Dan. Thanks so much for the call. Real quickly, let's just go around the room. Would you rather see Belichick, if it's just between these two teams, in Dallas or in Philadelphia? Let me start you off with Stu. Stu, would you rather see Belichick in Dallas with Jerry Jones or in Philadelphia?
Selfishly, I think Dallas for all the drama and storylines it would create. I just think that would just be like a match made in heaven, him and Jerry. And I don't mean like a Super Bowl. I just mean like for all the stories it would give us.
I understand what you say. And then someone's going to call and be like, what are you talking about? They'll kill each other in Dallas. But from a coverage standpoint, Belichick gives you nothing. And then Jerry Jones is an open book. It would be fascinating. Also with all the national media as well. Samter, where would you rather see Belichick, Dallas or Philadelphia?
Stu stole my thought.
Your thunder, big sports radio term.
Yeah, so I hate Stu. I never want to talk to Stu again. I think Stu deserves to get a nice swift kick in the behind. No, the Eagles are a much better fit for Belichick. I think that's his type of team, his type of city, his type of franchise. So I think he's a better fit. However, God, to see Jerry and Belichick together with that star in Dallas, America's team, it would be absolute radio, TV, and just sports media gold. It would be absolutely the most incredible coach-team combination that we maybe have ever seen in the history of sports.
I actually think he's a better fit in Dallas. And it's not from a selfish media conversation. I just think Belichick would have no respect for Howie Roseman, who's one of the best executives in the NFL. And last time Howie Roseman and the Eagles brought in a big-name coach, it got so ugly with Chip Kelly. And we know, like, Chip Kelly made Howie Roseman move his office. That's how ugly it got. And Howie Roseman basically, like, turned into an intern before he got his job back and then ended up winning a Super Bowl. I believe Belichick would have more respect and be willing to listen slightly more to Jerry Jones, and Jerry Jones bringing him, basically handed him over everything or a lot, where in Philly, you would still have Howie Roseman there, and I think the two heads would just be clashing constantly between Bill Belichick and Howie Roseman, even though you could argue that's the best executive and the best coach in the game, and then you'd be pairing them up together. So I would say Dallas is the better fit in terms of the match for Belichick, but you look at the roster, I'd rather the Eagles roster compared to the Cowboys. That's just me. So Jim Harbaugh is potentially working out an extension with Michigan. We've heard about this for a while with Dan Wetzel. He says it's a 6-year deal, $11.5 million guaranteed per year. That would be the highest in college football. But there's one stipulation in there. Harbaugh wants immunity from termination for any finding for multiple current NCAA investigations. We'll react to that on the other side. Plus, Mike Tomlin storms off the podium last night after his team lost to the Bills when he was asked about his future. Is Mike Tomlin on his way out of the Steel City? Harbaugh, Tomlin, Zach Gelb Show when we return in 5 minutes.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. 1 minute remaining. $45 seconds remaining. $30 seconds remaining. $15 seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
He's live. He's nationwide on CBS Sports Radio. This is the Zach Gelb Show.
I'm sick of talking about those embarrassing Eagles. It is the Zach Gelb Show on CBS Sports Radio. A team that showed zero heart down the stretch and a team that quit. So let's put the Eagles on the back burner for about 20 minutes. Hugh Douglas, former Philadelphia Eagle, he's going to join us 20 minutes from right now, right here on the Zach Gelb Show on CBS Sports Radio. But let's talk about some champions, and then also let's talk about a team that even though they could have tapped out, they did not quit. That's the Michigan Wolverines. They're the champions. And then a team that used to be champions, the Pittsburgh Steelers, which they have not won a playoff game since the 2016 season. They were a team that lost T.J. Watt. They didn't have him for the playoff game, right? They're playing Mason Rudolph at quarterback. And even when they were down multiple scores up against the Buffalo Bills, they still found a way to get back into the game before Buffalo and Josh Allen ended up being the superior team yesterday afternoon in snowy, frigid Buffalo. Let's start, though, with Michigan and with Jim Harbaugh. So this idea that Jim Harbaugh is coming back to return to Michigan, I think it's unlikely, because the reason why I'll keep on saying that it's unlikely is this offer now has been out on the table for a while. And I know there's been different reports, like one was 10 years, $125 million, and Dan Wetzel comes out with the article today that the contract would be 6 years at $11.5 million guaranteed per year, which would make him the highest paid coach in football. But there has been an offer to some capacity that has been there for the taking, and Harbaugh hasn't accepted it. Now, we know the last 2 years, and thankfully he didn't get offered an NFL job, that Jim Harbaugh, if he would have been offered by Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah the Vikings job, he would have taken it. He was in that interview for 12 hours or so. And then last offseason, whether the Broncos or the Panthers didn't want him for whatever the reasons were, he wasn't offered a job. Now, it was good for Michigan that he came back. It was good for Harbaugh that he came back because it was a last dance sort of feel with the Michigan Wolverines. And they ended up, even with all the sanctions and the scandals that happened or are pending, once everyone found out about Connor Stallions and the sign stealing, well, they put the ball down. Everything was even. Michigan said, we'll run right through Penn State, no problem. All right, you factor and sandwich in Maryland in between. You want to take the coach away up against Ohio State, it doesn't matter. Kyle McCord will end up throwing an interception. You want to go up against the greatest college football coach of all time and Nick Saban while they're trending and Alabama was hot and you could roll Tide, doesn't matter. They'll beat them in overtime after they made a bunch of mistakes. And then up, it's Big Bad Washington coming to town, to H-Town for the national championship game. Michael Penix Jr. is the greatest thing on earth. Kalen DeBoer, who is a friend of the show, sensational coach. People are saying Washington's going to win. Washington's going to win, and Michigan took it to them. And Michigan made them not even, they didn't have to break a sweat in the fourth quarter, where they set the tone with two big runs early on by Donovan Edwards, both that resulted in touchdowns. So Harbaugh has done everything he could and then some at Michigan. Like, remember 3 years ago no one thought Harbaugh was going to look back at his tenure at Michigan and it was going to be favorable or it was going to be positive. Like, yeah, he got the program back to respectability, but ultimately, when you can't win a Big Ten championship, when you can't beat Ohio State, you're not going to be overly lauded for those efforts of just making Michigan a 9 or 10 win team each and every year and you lose to Ohio State. Heck, that's basically what Penn State has turned out to be. But I don't need to trash Penn State today. I do that enough on 364 other days out of the year. So Harbaugh took it to a level that no one saw was coming outside of J.J. McCarthy. We know the one thing that's still burning in his tummy, and you have to look at it from a human standpoint too. You finally got your championship. You got your championship at your alma mater. But before that, as great of a coach as you've been, and I love Harbaugh, absolutely adore Harbaugh, when you lose a Super Bowl to your brother, not just lose a Super Bowl, but lose a Super Bowl to your brother, where you were down and out to start, you make this great comeback, and then your team stalled with 10 yards to go in the red zone. That's got to motivate you every day. That's got to eat at you every day. Because sometimes you could compartmentalize a loss and you could store it away. When the person you lost to is your brother, and how much you see your brother and how tight of a family you are, every time you see your brother, Jim Harbaugh's got to be thinking, man, I lost to that mother bleeper in a Super Bowl. You just have to, naturally. It's like when, for example, you break up with someone and then you keep on seeing that person on social media. It's like a constant reminder of what you had. But you could ultimately unfollow someone on social media, or as the kids do now, mute someone on social media. But when this is your blood, when this is your family, this is your brother who you love, you see him all the time. The only way to have that feeling go away to some point is to go win it all. And Harbaugh, talking about Jim, has accomplished everything at Michigan. Now it's time to go chase that Lombardi trophy. And you win a national championship and a Lombardi trophy, you go down as one of the greatest coaches ever. And that's not hyperbole. That puts you in an elite fraternity. And I understand you won't ever be considered as the greatest pro football coach of all time, but I'm just talking about football coaches. Because everything he's done in college has been winning. And in the pros, even though he didn't win a Super Bowl, and I know that's what you play for, he did go to 3 NFC title games and a Super Bowl in 4 years as the coach of the Niners. You land in Los Angeles with the Chargers, or you land in Philadelphia, or you land in Dallas, wherever it is, and you win it all, man, that makes one unique resume for maybe the most unique coach I've ever encountered. Because Harbaugh, you could never predict him. Harbaugh is a good dude, but he's a strange dude. And I don't know where he's going to land. Like, the Chargers makes a ton of sense. He's already interviewed with them. But it seems like too obvious. But sometimes when you always have a person that goes the other way, when you expect him to go one way, maybe with everyone saying he'll go to the Chargers, that's one of the rare times we'll actually do what everyone's expecting him. But this one stipulation in the contract, I know people are making a big deal out of this. Like, oh, it's a guilty conscience. Oh, Harbaugh knows that there's big things around the corner. I'm like, no crap. Before the season, even before we found out about Connor Stallions and the whole sign-stealing scandal, which was one of the biggest overblown controversies I could ever remember, there was already a pending punishment that you knew was brewing when they self-imposed a 3-game suspension on Harbaugh because of the cheeseburgers and the recruiting infractions and coaches with impermissible contact when you had COVID. And if you remember, they were supposed to, the NCAA Committee of Infractions and Harbaugh, they were going to agree to a 3-game suspension. But they wanted Harbaugh to genuflect to the NCAA and say that he lied to NCAA investigators. Like, I don't even think the NCAA is even that annoyed with the infractions. It's more so them being petty because Harbaugh lied about it or allegedly lied about it. So just based off that, if he was going to agree and bow down, he would have got 3 games. Since he didn't bow down and they self-imposed 3 games, I don't think this is just going to be a 4-game suspension, 1 extra game. So he's probably going to get 2 more games, just based off that. And now you have the Stallions scandal where the Big Ten already popped him with the 3-game suspension against Penn State, Maryland, and Ohio State. Meant nothing because the Michigan Wolverines were just the best team in college football this year, and they won all 3 of those games. And even though, right, the NCAA comes out the other day, and they're like, nope, this is a legitimate championship. There's no asterisk on it. Everything was even, and look what Michigan did, blah, 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 blah. The Committee of Infractions still going to go after Harbaugh. And I don't even know how you could speculate or what you're going to speculate the number's going to be with this overblown scandal from what happened with the whole sign-stealing investigation. So I don't fault Jim Harbaugh whatsoever. It doesn't take a dummy. Don't give Michigan an out. And if Michigan is having this prevent why the extension isn't getting done with this immunity termination that Harbaugh wants for any findings from multiple current NCAA investigations, if that's what you let get in the way from this deal getting done, then you're a bunch of morons. And you deserve to lose Jim Harbaugh. Because whether it's the cheeseburgers or the impermissible contact or whether it's the sign stealings, who cares even if he misses the entirety of next year? Your reaction shouldn't be to fire this guy or have it out to get rid of this guy. You already know what's pending. Now, something else pops up that's out of your control, so be it. But this dude is one of you. This dude is an alum of your university. This is his alma mater. And as a coach, he just came back, restored the program, and then some, and just won you a national championship. Who gives a rat's ass if he bought some kid a cheeseburger? Who gives a rat's ass if he knew what Connor Stallions was doing or not? Because when everything was even, you put the ball down. Blake Corum ran it right down your throat. Donovan Edwards did too. Mikey Sanders still was great at the defensive side of the ball. Will Johnson picked off Michael Penix Jr. You're like, who cares? You won. So who cares what he did in the past or may have done in the past? But this stuff could come out and it could get leaked out. I still have a tough time envisioning Harbaugh back there next year. Because once again, I think Harbaugh wants to go back to the NFL and chase that dream of winning a Lombardi trophy. And even to some extent, Harbaugh probably even doubted that he was going to get a national championship at Michigan. Because right after he beat Ohio State once and won the Big Ten, he was right in an interview room practically begging for the Vikings job. Now he came back, beat Ohio State again, won another Big Ten championship, then tried to get another job last hiring cycle after saying he wouldn't. And the Viking thing wouldn't be a yearly occurrence. And here we are once again, it being another yearly occurrence. But now you beat Ohio State for 3 times in a row. You've won 3 straight Big Ten championships. And oh yeah, by the way, you won a national championship. So I think pretty much mission is accomplished for Jim Harbaugh. And just as long as he gets offered a job this hiring cycle with a bunch of jobs available, I think he's as good as gone for Michigan. The only way he lands back at Michigan if someone doesn't offer him a job. In the last 2 years, we haven't seen someone offer him a job in the NFL. Is that going to be 3 years in a row? I would highly doubt it. So I don't really care about this contract and all the details from Dan Wetzel and stuff like that, or these other guys like John U. Bacon and things along those lines. It doesn't matter to me. It's clear Harbaugh, his preference for next year is to be in the NFL, no matter how he spins it with how it plays out. So let's get to the aftermath of the Steelers and Bills game yesterday, because I have a thought on this. And there's a new report that's out there. This is a little tough to hear because he's just walking away in silence, but this is how it went down between the media and Mike Tomlin when they asked about his future after the Steelers season did come to a close in the wild card round where they lost to the Bills in Orchard Park.
Anyone? Mike, you have a year left on your contract.
So there you go. And that silence is him rolling his eyes and walking off to the podium. I go back to when Mike Tomlin had a report come out where the report was USC is going to show interest, something along the lines of Mike Tomlin. And Mike Tomlin was asked about it, and he went on this rant. He's like, do you think Belichick has to deal with this stuff? Do you think Andy Reid has to deal with this stuff? And he got annoyed. I think at that moment, Mike Tomlin said, well, if people don't believe me then, they'll never believe me whenever it comes to my future. So anytime I'm going to be asked about my future, I'm just not going to give an answer, and I'm going to end the press conference. I read absolutely zero into that response. I know there's a year left on the contract. I know there's been speculation on the future of Mike Tomlin, but I would be shocked, absolutely shocked if Mike Tomlin is not back next season coaching the Pittsburgh Steelers. And Mike Garafolo actually just tweeted out in a team meeting today, Mike Tomlin told Steelers players the speculation about him stepping away is unfounded and he plans on coaching the team in 2024. So if you believe him, there you go. That should be enough. If you still think Tomlin's walking away, then there's nothing I'm going to be able to say that will change your line of thinking. It is the Zach Gelb Show on CBS Sports Radio. We'll take a timeout. We will get into the demise of the Eagles next with Philadelphia Eagles legend Hugh Douglas, who will join us after these short messages.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. 1 minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. .45 seconds remaining. 30 seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
Now back to the Zach Gelb Show.
The Eagles go from being 10-1 to finishing 1-6 down the stretch. And as we enter the second round of the playoffs, the Eagles are no longer participating in the postseason after getting stomped out last night and embarrassed by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Let's welcome in a Philadelphia Eagles legend, and that is Hugh Douglas, who now does a great job hosting middays on Sports Radio 94 WIP. Hugh, first off, appreciate the time. Thanks so much for doing this on a busy day. What's shaking? How are you?
You know, Zach, you hurt me when you said demise, but then when you hit me with stomped out, that hurt even worse than demise.
Yeah, well, the Buccaneers bust last night. They saw the Eagles lying down, and they drove right over them and then backed it up. That was putrid, and that's my biggest problem with this Eagles team, Hugh. They showed no heart. They showed no fight, and I know it's very easy to throw out this term, but it just felt like they quit.
Oh, Zach, when you hit me with those words, man, it just, as a former Philadelphia Eagle, it hurts so bad to hear you say it, but I have no argument for it, man. You know, I talked to a lot of my old teammates, man, and my phone was ringing off the hook last night with guys asking me, because they know I'm here, what's going on with this football team, and I had no answers for them. So to hear you say it, and just put it in reality, man, it just hurts so bad, but I can't argue with that.
There's a lot of reasons why you go from 10-1 to finishing the season 1-6. What's the one thing, you being someone that played with so much passion and energy and toughness, that when you look at both sides of the ball, what's the one thing in particular that still just makes you mad with what transpired with this team down the stretch?
Well, it was something underlying that was going on with this squad that was never hashed out. And I said that weeks ago. There's something going on with this squad that nobody's really talking about. Everybody's kind of talking over. You could even hear it in the messaging that the players had, because nobody was on the same page. The one thing that you know, when a team is in lockstep with one another, from the head coach down to the players, everybody has kind of the same messaging. You've heard it, Zach. When coaches say one thing in a meeting, and if you go ask the players the same, they will use some of the same words that the coaches use. It's called rowing in the same direction. And this team, for whatever reason, 6 weeks ago, they weren't rowing in the same direction. And they had these escape room events and all this other stuff trying to get it right, and it never got right.
Is it just as simple? And, you know, Sirianni, the last 2 years, has done a really good job. This year, he lost control of his locker room. Is it as simple as just to say, okay, this team lost Shane Steichen? I know that fans are really tough on Jonathan Gannon, but they've lost both of their coordinators. Is that what it just simply boils down to, that this team couldn't survive the losses of those two guys?
You know what? It's kind of hard to say. There's a camp here in Philadelphia that wants Nick Sirianni fired. I don't know how I feel about that. I know this business. I'm not a dummy. You know, you look at what's going on potentially in Dallas and what they're talking about with Mike McCarthy and the guy that's won 12 games in a season, and for the last 3 seasons. I'm not a dummy. I know how this works. But there was a disconnect somewhere between the quarterback and the coach that I don't know if the answer is to fire the coach. Now, I know that the coordinators, I don't think neither one of those guys are going to be here. But I don't know if I'm sold on firing Nick Sirianni, because he's done some pretty good things in the NFL. Like I said, I'm not a dummy. I know how this game works. But you're basically hitting, if you fire Sirianni in this situation, you're basically hitting the hard reset button.
I don't know if it's a hard reset, because this core, they have a lot of talent. Like, I don't think talent is necessarily the issue. Obviously, you could fine-tune some things. I think it comes down to a leadership perspective. And,
that's basically what I'm talking about. When I say hard reset, I'm saying if you get another coach in here, he's going to implement his philosophy. He's bringing in his people, and then you have another year of resetting what your goals are, like how you want to run your offense and things of that nature. That's why I'm not too sure if Coach Sirianni by firing him is the answer. That's what I mean by hard reset.
Gotcha. Hugh Douglas here with us. The biggest reason why I would fire him is no matter if the players like him or not, they quit on some capacity on the head coach this year, even though they'll tell you they love the coach. And I understand now, right, the my way or the highway approach doesn't work, but there's a difference in being a player's coach and then being a doormat. And it felt like this year, especially the final 6-7 games, Sirianni became a doormat for these players.
Yeah, there's no like those words are just so strong. I don't know, Zach.
But they're true, Hugh. They're true. No. This stuff drives me crazy today because it's one thing to be bad and not to reach where you're supposed to go. It's another thing to just quit, especially in that city. You know that city. Quitting is not acceptable.
You know what it is, Zach. What because I have a chance all the time to talk to a lot of these players. And to a man, when you look them in the face, they will tell you that they feel that they're a good football team and that they've played hard and that they believe in Coach Sirianni. But the proof ain't in the pudding because we see it every week. They go out there on the field and they lay stinky turds. And you look at it and you're wondering to yourself, you're like, how can you go out there week in and week out, especially on the defensive side of the ball, and make the same mistakes week in and week out? You had people running free in the secondary, uncontested, for weeks. So I get exactly what you're saying. It's just that, to your point, when you hear you say that about the city of Philadelphia and guys giving up, it just doesn't math. That math is not mathing for me. It really isn't.
The other thing, too, and this probably has to just make it crazy as a defensive player, being the great defensive player that Hugh Douglas was, I've never seen tackling as bad as this.
Oh, man, listen, when I tell you I've had former teammates of mine, we were texting back and forth. We've been talking all day, and they're so upset with what they were seeing on the field. It's ridiculous. I'm talking about from defensive linemen to secondary players. It's called want to. A friend of mine coined that phrase a long time ago. It's called want to. And a lot of these guys did not want to tackle anybody yesterday. I don't care how you want to talk about it, and people talk about saving themselves and things of that nature. Nobody wanted to make a tackle yesterday in a playoff game. It's ridiculous. That was the only team that I saw yesterday that looked like the Philadelphia Eagles, that looked like they really didn't want to be in the playoffs. That's ridiculous to me.
It absolutely is. And the other thing, too, right, you have to do this each and every day. So you're going to say some positive things. You're going to say some negative things. But I don't know if there's two guys that love the Eagles more than Brian Dawkins and Brian Westbrook. And to see them be critical of this team, that tells me everything I need to know about the 2023.
You know what's funny? I've been texting with Brian Dawkins all day. And when I tell you, as soon as I answer a text, he's firing off another text talking about how disgusted he is with this team and how it would have been. You know, when you get our age, you have all this gray in your beard like that, all you get to talk about is how it used to be back in my day and what we would have done if we were in the locker room. Unfortunately, we're not. And it's a different day and age. And to see this, man, it's just tough. Seth Joyner, everybody that I talk to, Ike Reese, guys that see this is not Eagles football, no question about it.
And not only that, but you also continue to look at this. You see guys do things that are out of character that speaks to really the incompetence that happened behind the scenes. Like, I've known Hassan Reddick before anyone knew who Hassan Reddick was since I attended Temple University. Devontae Smith is one of the best teammates that there is as well. To see both of those guys have blow-ups on the sidelines at the coaching staff, you know, I don't think anyone should be surprised with what happened in Tampa Bay when that was happening towards the end of the season.
Yeah, and you know what the funny thing is? We were told for weeks that this team was going to get it together, and unfortunately it didn't happen that way. And even I drank the Kool-Aid. I believe, you know, being in Philadelphia, being a part of this city for as long as I've been, that they were going to find some way to turn it around. But unfortunately, that was not the case, and that's where we are. Like, I don't know, honestly, if firing Coach Sirianni is the answer, but you make some very, very valid points. And like I said, when we started this, I know how this business works. And if the team is not responding to the coach, then you have to take drastic measures. But there was also some rumblings about the quarterback and his interactions with some of the guys on the sideline as well. So I don't know what the correct answer is. I think the best thing to do in this situation is let cooler heads prevail and give it a couple days. But you know what, Zach? The unfortunate thing about all this, we got a bunch of hot coaches out there, man, some sexy coaches that everybody wants to get a conversation with and have an interview with. So you can't wait too long before you decide to make a decision.
Let me get to those coaches in just a second, but I want to circle back on what you said regarding Jalen Hurts. I was blown away by his leadership last year. By the times I was in that locker room, you could tell that he was the heartbeat of this team. There were so many times this year he was just sitting there on the sidelines looking like he was sulking, yet players yelling at him. What needs to change just with the leadership style of Jalen Hurts, in your opinion?
You know what? I think this is where it gets a little difficult for me because Jalen Hurts had an interview yesterday where he talked about something about this wasn't our year and anything like that. Jalen Hurts, since he's been here, and I wasn't here for the whole time when he first got here, but I followed this team from afar. And he always spoke about seizing the moment and taking advantage of the situation that was put in front of him. And to hear him talk like that yesterday and basically saying that it wasn't our time and it wasn't our moment, anything like that, it made me sad to see that and hear that, because here's a guy that when you look at his whole life, his whole career, he's taken advantage of the adversity that was given to him. You know, you talk about being benched in Alabama, not crying about that, and coming back and being the resilient player that he is. Went to Oklahoma, same thing, got drafted second, got paid $250 million. So when I hear him say stuff like that, it's just disheartening because it's one of those things where that has not been his mantra since I've known him to be a professional quarterback. So, you know, he was always a guy that kind of he was the aggressor. He conceded yesterday when he said that it was one of those things where, you know, we had crumbs or whatever he said, I'm paraphrasing here, and that it wasn't our time. So to see him on the sideline, he doesn't need to be a rah-rah leader for me. He doesn't have to get in everybody's face and give new rocking speeches or anything like that. But you have to be more engaged. You have to look like you care. I know he cares. I think he cares because he's been telling me that for the last couple of years. I just think that somewhere along the line, there was a disconnect, and they need to figure it out. I think in this locker room right now, there needs to be some hard conversations that need to be had. Obviously now they're not going to be had because, you know, everybody's doing exit interviews. But moving forward, there has to be some accountability in that locker room.
Well, let me ask you this. If you're saying, right, we know Hurts is not going anywhere with the contract, nor should he. If you're saying you're more leaning towards bringing back Sirianni, outside of just addressing whatever problems going on in the locker room, you playing the game, you having your experience, knowing what it takes in this league, what would your biggest piece of advice and your biggest message to be also understanding this city to this Eagles core and this Eagles group that's still trying to go get a championship down the road?
Accountability. That's the one thing that I feel was a staple when I played with the Philadelphia Eagles, was that we held each other accountable. And sometimes, even with my friends today, you have to have hard conversations. Can't have a lot of yes man around you. Sometimes you have to be told the truth about yourself, even if you don't want to hear it. And if that's the case, that goes for Coach Sirianni, that goes for Jalen Hurts, and anybody else who's not rowing in the same direction that the Philadelphia Eagles want to row in. You have to have some hard conversations sometimes, man. You have to take a look at yourself, the man in the mirror, and figure out how to get it done. Because if you're like, all year long, we talked about how this team felt like they were a team of destiny. I heard the quarterback say it every week about how his whole mantra and his whole drive was to get back to the Super Bowl. Well, if that's the case, then you should be able to have a conversation with somebody. Hey, if you're not doing it the right way or the way that works best for us, then if you're serious about making it to the Super Bowl, then you have that conversation and you correct it. Simple as that. That's how I look at it.
Let's say they do move on from Nick Sirianni. You got Belichick available, Pete Carroll, Mike Vrabel, Jim Harbaugh. Who do you want to see to be the next head coach of this team?
You know, it's funny that you asked me this question because my partner, Joe Giglio, he has his list already of the coaches that he wants. And Coach Belichick is at the top. Like, I like Coach Belichick. Coach Belichick was a coach when I was in New York Jets, with the New York Jets for a small time. I think he's a little bit older. No disrespect to the old heads out there, because I'm one of them. No disrespect. But I think that it's important to have a coach that connects with your football team and has not so big of a generational gap. So I'm leaning more towards like a Mike Vrabel or Jim Harbaugh. I'm thinking Jim. Jim is at the top of my list.
I don't know how Jim would work with Howie. That's my one concern. Now, Vrabel has had some concerns working with general managers, I guess, as well, the last 2 years. But I think Vrabel would be the best fit for Philadelphia because I think he's the perfect mix of a guy that is considered a player's coach right now, but he won't be a doormat like Sirianni and to hold that accountability in the locker room.
Yeah, that's the thing that I think that we're looking at right now because it feels to me, because you keep saying it, that Coach Sirianni's his reputation around the league right now, it ain't the greatest.
No.
It's not the greatest. So
changes a lot in 1 year. Last year he was on top of the world. Now he's the biggest dope.
Man, I tell you, that's a long way to fall, brother. I'm here to tell you. But I would think between the two, and plus, Coach Vrabel is the guy that likes to run the football. I think if you want to help fix Jalen, because that's what we're talking about now, every running a good running game is every quarterback's best friend. So with the skill set that Jalen has and the way that he's matured at the first half of the season, I'm willing to take a chance on Coach Vrabel or Coach Harbaugh.
By the way, Hugh, it doesn't take much it takes a lot actually for me to like rip a team like this. But I hear you. It's a simple thing. Like, there's just some certain things that are so obvious. And I'm never going to pretend like I know how to call plays or anything like that. But their approach on offense this year, how many times last night am I going to see a screen pass? And then, Hugh, they get to 3rd and 2, and they want to throw the ball 40 yards downfield? That's the time you should run the screen pass.
Zach, I watched the game most of the time, not this year. But I watched the game from a defensive perspective. I like to watch the line play. But I'm with you. Sometimes watching this offense play, I'm like, what the hell are they doing? Like, what? Like, the plays had no fluidity. They didn't mesh very, very well. And sometimes you would see, like in the Giants game a couple weeks ago, they started the game, they had 2 great runs by Kenny Gainwell. Then they dropped back and try to heave the ball 50 yards down the field. I didn't understand that. But like you said, I'm not an offensive coordinator. But I know enough about offense to know that a lot of plays have to look similar in order to try to fool the defense, because that's basically what we're talking about.
Let's be real. You would be laughing. As a defensive player, you'd be laughing going up against this Eagles offense. You'd be licking your chops.
It's a little simplistic. I've heard stories of guys saying that teams have come up to the line of scrimmage and they know the Eagles formations and they call out the plays right before they run. So yeah, it was a little preschool.
Yeah. Last thing I'll ask you, Hugh Douglas, when you take a look back at this season and you discuss A.J. Brown, what's the truth with him? We hear 9,000 things with A.J. Brown. What's A.J. Brown's biggest gripe in your opinion?
I would say he's misunderstood. See, Zach, it's easy because we've seen so many examples of diva receivers, malcontent receivers. It's easy to try to lump him into that. I think he's a passionate player. I think that a lot of times he's misunderstood with his passion. But I'll take a receiver of that caliber anytime. You know, I played with T.O., and historically, famously, people think that me and T.O. can't stand each other. Me and T.O. are good. We are good. Even though he misremembered this story in the locker room, that's fine with me. Me and T.O. are fine, man, but I will play with a guy like that any day.
So you didn't kick his ass in the locker room?
No, see, it didn't even happen. See, Zach, there you go. It didn't even happen like that, man. It didn't even happen like that.
Well, Hugh, really appreciate you doing this. Nothing but love for you and your family. Thanks so much for doing this today. Much appreciated.
Hey, no problem, man. Appreciate you.
There you go. The great Hugh Douglas. Excellent performance on the Zach Gelb Show on CBS Sports Radio. We'll take a timeout. We'll continue the biggest story of the day. Big decisions in Dallas, big decisions in Philadelphia. Will McCarthy, will Sirianni survive? We'll take a timeout. Update time first. Here is the Act Man, Rich Ackerman.
CBS Sports Radio. Sports Flash.
Well, there are currently 7 coaching vacancies in the NFL. There could be more coming, but not in Pittsburgh. According to reports, head coach Mike Tomlin told his players he will be there next year, that the speculation about him stepping away is unfounded. The Eagles' offseason has begun much sooner than they had hoped, and it begins with a big hole to fill with 6-time All-Pro center Jason Kelce reportedly retiring after 13 seasons in the NFL. He told his teammates last night following the wild card loss, the former 6th-round pick in 2011 is a certain Hall of Famer. The Saints will have a new look offensively next year after reportedly firing coordinator Pete Carmichael, who had been there since the start of the Sean Payton era. Raheem Morris is a popular head coaching candidate and is interviewing with 4 teams about their openings and will start tomorrow with the Panthers. Arizona has reportedly hired San Jose State's Brent Brennan to replace Jed Fish. He was actually a finalist when Fish got the job several years ago. And college basketball tonight, second-ranked Purdue after dropping in the poll. The Boilermakers are on the road to face Indiana and Bloomington. I'm Rich Ackerman.
Hey, this is Bart Winkler. I've got a new show weeknights. Join me for the Bart Winkler Show starting at 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific. Only on CBS Sports Radio.
CBS Sports Radio.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. 1 minute remaining. $45 seconds remaining. $30 seconds remaining. $15 seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
The Zach Gelb Show is on the air across the nation on CBS Sports Radio.
Where are all you cockroach Cowboy fans that all year said, Zach, you're not giving this team any credit. Zach, this team is really damn good. Zach, this team's going to make their first NFC title game since 1995. Where are you? You're silent. You're exterminated. The cockroaches are exterminated. And it happens every year.
Here's Zach Gelb.
This portion of the show is brought to you by Wesley Financial. Stuck in a timeshare, want out? Contact Wesley Financial Group now and get a free timeshare exit information kit at wesleyfinancialgroup.com. You can always listen to us across one of your great local CBS Sports Radio affiliates, Sirius XM Channel 158, the free Odyssey app, and also on YouTube.com where we're streaming, youtube.com/CBS Sports Radio. And there's a good conversation going on right now in the chat. What's the most embarrassing loss from Wild Card Weekend? Is it the Browns just getting blown out by the Texans? Is it the Philadelphia Eagles just quitting and being embarrassing up against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers? Or is it the Dallas Cowboys letting a young phenom in his first ever playoff start and in his first true season as a starting quarterback in the NFL, Jordan Love, come into your house, win the toss? And I find it funny that the Packers, they win the toss of the whole Jair Alexander controversy from a few weeks ago. And they take the ball and they just shove it down your throat and making that game pretty much over at halftime. I excuse the Browns because it was so improbable what they did this year. Like whatever happened with the Browns in the playoffs was going to be gravy. When you lose Nick Chubb, you lose Deshaun Watson for the season. You knew eventually there was an expiration date on elite Joe Flacco. And you were all the offensive line injuries. Like, I'll give the Browns a pass. The conversation really comes down to the Eagles or the Cowboys. And when I look at the Cowboys, and you know how much I can't stand the Dallas Cowboys, I don't think their loss was as embarrassing as the Eagles. Because the Cowboys just had a team come into their house that had nothing to lose. And they were just more aggressive than the Dallas Cowboys and the Green Bay Packers. And that team just got pressure, and they saw their shadow from the last two previous years, and they were like, uh-oh, here it comes again. But I don't think it was a lack of effort or heart with the Cowboys. The Cowboys were embarrassing for a bunch of different ways. And quite frankly, they were overrated for most of this year. Like any Cowboy fan that called me up and said, oh, we have a great team. Oh, we're going to the Super Bowl this year. Yeah, I have a bridge to sell for you, too. Well, we'll talk after the show. But with the Eagles, they were 10-1. The Eagles were in a Super Bowl last year. The Eagles were up by 10 against the Kansas City Chiefs. And then the next year, you had changes at your offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator. But the actual roster was pretty similar. You lost C.J. Gardner-Johnson. You lost Javon Hargrave. But you still had your main pieces. Like Miles Sanders did nothing in Carolina this year because you didn't really need him. You know, the running back in Philly is more of a product of the offensive line and the system. But to see that team going into the Niners game, even with them not blowing out opponents, but they were 10-1, to see what transpired after that, it's not a lack of talent. It's not that this team wasn't good enough. It's that there were so many problems and so many egos in the locker room and such a disconnect with the coaching staff and the coordinators that instead of fighting and finding a way to turn this season around after losing to the 49ers, not even losing the 49ers, got emasculated by the 49ers. We should have known that there were big problems in Philadelphia the following week, where you got emasculated again by the Dallas Cowboys. And then you allow a 92-yard drive to Drew Lock. You lose a game at the end of the season to the Giants. You'll lose. Like, I picked the Cardinals to cover the 12-point spread. I said the Eagles can't be a 12-point favorite against anybody. I didn't think the Cardinals were going to win the game outright. You let Jonathan Gannon go into your house and say, bleep you to Philadelphia? That team just had no heart. Team had no guts. Team was a bunch of quitters. And that's why, to me, it's an effort issue. Like, there's a lot of people that you work with or a lot of people that you encounter in life where they may not be successful. They may not do what you ask them to do and accomplish what they do. And I'm not saying, hey, just live in a participation society where someone has effort and you hand them out a trophy. But if you can't accomplish a goal, it better not be because you didn't try your best. And that's my problem with the Eagles. They quit. They tapped out. They booked their reservations probably for their vacation for this week because they knew their season was over. And that's what drives me nuts. It drives me nuts that this Eagles team in a tough city like that and a fan base that you may think they're crazy, but they just want accountability. They just want their players to reach a certain standard. That team not only let the season get away in the final 7 games, let it go right down the drain. They let it go right down the drain in a snap of a finger. I said earlier it was a grotesque performance. It really was. Like, that was appalling to watch that game. You know, it was 6 minutes left in the fourth quarter. It was snowing in New York City. I had about a 10-minute walk home. I said to my buddy that had us over his house to watch the game, and he made some bolognese with some great garlic bread and had some kale Caesar salad as well. I was like, I'm going to start to get going. I'm going to leave. There's 6 minutes left. This game's been over for about 2 hours. He's like, nope, got to sit there and watch the end of the game. So I was like, all right, I'll sit there and watch the end of the game. And that's a passionate Eagle fan that I know. Diehard Eagles fan. And he was negative from the start because he knew. He knew that this team was embarrassing. But you have fans that didn't quit on this team. They just told you the truth about this team. The Eagles players, they quit. And that's pathetic. Absolutely pathetic. Now it's all eyes on Jerry's World and all eyes on Jeffrey Lurie in the city of brotherly love. And I thought it was hysterical last night how they showed the Liberty Bell on the 10-1 start. And then, boom, down the stretch, 1-6 they come, and you put the crack in the Liberty Bell. Whoever thought of that at ESPN, you deserve a raise. They may not have any more money at ESPN with how much they pay McAfee. I don't know if they have any more money to go around to give that person a raise. But, geez Louise, whoever thought of that idea, very brilliant. But now all eyes are on Jeffrey Lurie and on Jerry Jones. Will either owner, who both have a head coach in McCarthy that has had a lot of regular season success in Dallas, Sirianni, 3 years, 3 playoff performances, a Super Bowl trip, which owner's going to blink first? And I think it's okay doing some behind-the-scenes digging. If we get rid of McCarthy, if we get rid of Sirianni, do we have a name lined up? And there's 4 attractive names out there. Belichick, Harbaugh, Carroll, Vrabel. Who are you going to actually get, though? But regardless if you know or not who you're going to get, and if you have it pretty much signed, sealed, and delivered, it doesn't make sense to bring either back regardless. Because for McCarthy, he's got to go because they lost in the wild card round. This was supposed to be the year that the Cowboys, right? I'm not saying Super Bowl, but when you look at the field, it was like, oh, they actually got a chance to get to the NFC title game. And I always told you they were going to be the drama Dallas choking Cowboys, and they would bow out eventually and choke out eventually. But they didn't even get to the second weekend. But for Philadelphia, Super Bowl aspirations, legitimate Super Bowl aspirations, a 10-1 start after losing a Super Bowl, that's ridiculous. and you're out wild card weekend against Baker Mayfield, Todd Bowles, and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, you got to get rid of the coach. Because I'll say it for the 9,000th time today, Sirianni's a doormat. He's a player's coach, but he's a doormat. You could be a player's coach, but not be a doormat. Sirianni is a doormat. And you got it. I would say Vrabel should be the target in Philadelphia. And for the Cowboys, Belichick. You say, I get to make 2 hires. Cowboys, Belichick. Vrabel, Eagles. That's what needs to happen. But we'll see how it plays out. Will Jeffrey Lurie have the guts to get rid of Nick Sirianni? And will McCarthy get loyalty from Jerry Jones? It's an easy decision, guys. We're waiting. Time's ticking away.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. 45 seconds remaining. Seconds remaining. Seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
He's live. He's nationwide on CBS Sports Radio. This is the Zach Gelb Show. Here's your host, Zach Gelb.
Alrighty, rocking and rolling. Hour number 3 of our radio program. It is the Zach Gelb Show, coast to coast on CBS Sports Radio. To no surprise, the biggest story of the day are the embarrassing Philadelphia Eagles. So, I think I've said this now 9,001 times today. They quit last night. They were pathetic. They were putrid. They were lethargic. And quite frankly, if you're a football player in that locker room, you should be embarrassed. And I'm not going to give that that line of, you should return your salary for the season. I won't do that stuff. But when you get to the Eagles, we have talked about this until I'm probably blue in the face now, about the future of Nick Sirianni. I believe he should be fired, and not many have defended Nick Sirianni today. I know Hugh Douglas brought up the point that, maybe they should bring him back, but I think Hugh, at the end of that conversation, was more so on my side. Why, when he's a doormat in Sirianni, you can't have a players coach that's a doormat. You need a players coach that has some respect and a players coach that knows how to reel it back in the locker room when the locker room starts to have all these problems of contention. But the poll question today, should the Eagles fire Nick Sirianni? You can find that at Zach Gelb, ZACHGELB, also at CBS Sports Radio. You could jump on board on the phone lines as well, 855-212-4CBS, 855-212-4227. 77.1% say yes, the Eagles should fire Nick Sirianni. 22.9% say no. Now, if the Eagles are going to fire Sirianni, I guess there's a chance late night tonight that we could get that announcement, but I think that announcement would come more Wednesday or Thursday. Like, say what you want about Sirianni, and trust me, I don't think there's anyone that's been more critical than him the last 2 hours on a live radio program than me. I do believe the Eagles will show respect to him, because whether you think he should be fired or not, and I'm clearly on the side that he should, the last 3 years, Sirianni got this team to the playoffs 3 times. Now, the first year was impressive. Then the second year, them getting to the Super Bowl was impressive. This year, it was just a slow, painful death. And they teased you. 10-1 start, okay, not playing great. They still haven't played their best brand of football yet. They'll find a way to do so. And then it was just 1-6, woof, woof, down the stretch. So I do believe that the Eagles will go through a diligent process. You got to make a decision. I think you got to make a decision by Thursday. And I think it's an easy decision, in my opinion, but there's still T's you got to cross and I's you got to dot. But when you look at the Cowboys, when is that decision going to happen? Because like Samter, I'm not saying that like it has to happen by tomorrow, but the Cowboy game happened on Sunday. So you've had Monday. Now we've had all of Tuesday. You know Jerry Jones doesn't like to keep quiet and keep things hush-hush. If we don't get an announcement by tomorrow with Mike McCarthy, doesn't it kind of feel like maybe there's a chance that McCarthy's going to stay? That's now I'll give you 2 days. I'll give Sirianni and Jeffrey Lurie, right? Game ended last night, Monday. I'll give you Tuesday to meet, regroup. Wednesday, any final questions, and then by Thursday, you got to make that decision. With the Cowboys, you had Sunday, now you had Monday, now you had Tuesday. We don't get a decision by Jerry tomorrow. Maybe I'm going to start to think that McCarthy's going to stay, even though I think he absolutely should be fired.
Now, I don't know the process that Jerry Jones is going through, but
I don't think anyone knows anything really about Jerry Jones.
Think about the guys that are out there. Jim Harbaugh, Bill Belichick. Up until a few minutes ago, it seemed like maybe Mike Tomlin, Pete Carroll, Mike Vrabel. There's a lot of big names out there, and there's a lot of teams going after the big fish. If I'm Jerry Jones, I'm not firing Mike McCarthy unless I'm certain I'm getting one of the big fish. If Bill Belichick tells me, listen, I'm just not interested in coaching this team, I'm not interested in being part of this organization, it's just not for me, okay. If Jim Harbaugh is like, I want to go to the Chargers or back to Michigan, I'm not looking anywhere else, so be it.
Okay.
So if you're Jerry
Jones...
Still
got 2 more names, though.
Right, Pete Carroll.
Vrabel.
And again, I don't know if Jerry Jones says, I think Mike Vrabel gives me a better chance to win than Mike McCarthy.
I do.
Maybe, but I'm not... I don't know if Jerry Jones feels that. And so I guess my point is that if I'm Jerry Jones, I'm not firing Mike McCarthy unless I decide and make it a point of who are the guys who I'm willing to replace him with, who do I think is better than Mike McCarthy, and of those guys, which one of them can I actually get? Because if he fires Mike McCarthy and Belichick goes to the Falcons and Jim Harbaugh goes to the Chargers and Pete Carroll decides to take a year off and Mike Vrabel goes to
the Commanders
or
the Eagles,
whatever it is.
But that's the other thing here. You now have Jerry Jones and Jeffrey Lurie with this decision that's sitting right in their face. And I'm not saying that the next coach gets hired right away. There's a process. Belichick's an attractive name. Harbaugh's an attractive name. Pete Carroll's an attractive name. Vrabel's an attractive name. So even though you're trying to dictate this on your own terms, and we're talking about billionaires that are extremely successful and they like to have control, this is the rare instance where the coach has a lot of control. Because you could want, let's say, Jim Harbaugh, and Jim could say, you know what? I want to get sniffed around by everybody. I want the Chargers to interview me, and they already did. I want to go interview here. I want to go interview there. There's a staring game getting played here between the Eagles and the Cowboys, and whoever blinks first, whether it's a 24-hour head start or a few days head start, that could ultimately decide who ends up getting the better coach. Because how many times do we hear about these meetings where a coach goes to a facility and they don't let the coach leave until a deal gets ironed out? And you could fall in love with an NFL franchise or an NFL owner in less than 24 hours. It happens. But what can happen, the coordinators, offensive and defensive coordinators, I think are now the way that I look at quarterbacks coming out of college. And what I mean by that is we always try to project and predict who's going to be the next transcendent quarterback. At least we get to see some game tape. A lot of times with the coordinators, it's okay. You see what their offenses or defenses do, but you don't know how they're going to be leaders. And I've given up trying to predict who's the next great offensive and defensive coordinator in this league that's going to turn out to be a great head coach. I've given up, quarterbacks in college trying to predict who's going to be that next transcendent quarterback that goes from college to the NFL. But with both these franchises, they can't afford to risk. They can't afford, right now, Ben Johnson's the hottest name on the market from a coordinator perspective, the OC of the Detroit Lions. Ben Johnson can't be the next head coach of the Philadelphia Eagles. Ben Johnson can't be the next head coach of the Dallas Cowboys. You need an established coach because Philadelphia has been closer than Dallas, but both of these teams are right there consistently in the playoffs. The Eagles going farther than the Cowboys last year. The Cowboys being stuck in that wild card round, divisional round. You need an established coach with clout in this league in a 3-4 year window, and all 4 of those guys we just mentioned. Because Vrabel's rosters were never great in Tennessee, And he took that team to a 1 seed in an AFC championship game. We know what Pete Carroll could do. He's been to 2 Super Bowls. We know what Bill Belichick could do. He's coached in 9 Super Bowls as a head coach and won 6 of them. We know what Jim Harbaugh could do. College winner. NFL, he got to 3 NFC title games and a Super Bowl. But all 4 of those names, to me, are better than Sirianni, and they're better than McCarthy. So I don't think it's likely that if you move on from one of those guys that you're going to swing and miss 4 times on those 4 big names. In Vrabel, in Carroll, Belichick, and Harbaugh. That's just me. But let's also get to the other side of this Eagles conversation. Because the coach is going to get it tonight. Heck, we've talked about this coach now for 2 hours and 10 minutes. And I've said everything I could say about why the Eagles should fire Nick Sirianni. Yesterday, we've talked about why the Dallas Cowboys should fire Mike McCarthy. What does the future of Jalen Hurts look like? Now, he's under contract. He just signed a lucrative extension. He's getting paid as if he's one of the best quarterbacks in football. But starting next year, he's not entering the league as a top 5 quarterback. He could get back to that spot, but I can't say he's a top 5 quarterback right now in the NFL. And yesterday we talked a lot about the future of Dak because Dak, right, is an upcoming free agent. Jalen Hurts is under contract. And we've seen in Philadelphia before, the quarterback get paid, the quarterback go from an elite quarterback, and then the quarterback loses his way. Happened with Carson Wentz. I know I'm extremely critical of Carson Wentz. Heck, there was a poster from Maggie and Perloff that I wanted to get banned here, and we made sure that we ripped it up on the air. But I fell for Carson Wentz when I was covering the Eagles. I thought he was the next great quarterback. I was believing everything he said, even when articles came out suggesting the other part of it. Those articles ended up being right. And Carson Wentz is someone that I can't stand now. But you look at where they were, he was playing MVP ball. People forget that. Like nationally. He would have been the MVP of the league if he didn't get hurt and tear up his knee up against the Rams. Eagles went on to win a Super Bowl. They gave the job back to Wentz. Wentz got hurt again. Foles took him to the divisional round. If Alshon Jeffrey doesn't drop the ball against the Saints that ends up getting interception, they probably go back to an NFC title game. And who knows what would have happened there. But then Wentz became a problem in the locker room. You know, I look at Jalen Hurts. It's crazy because there's been so many times that he's been counted out and he found a way to get the job done. He was the man in Alabama. Then got benched at halftime of a national championship game. Tua Tagovailoa came in, and he threw the walk-off touchdown pass to Devontae Smith up against Georgia. Then Jalen Hurts stays a year, gets called upon in the SEC title game because Tua Tagovailoa gets hurt, and Jalen Hurts beats Georgia to win the SEC championship for Alabama. Jalen Hurts didn't need to say. He stayed and ended up winning an SEC championship and being a big part of that game when Tua got hurt. Then he goes to Oklahoma, becomes a finalist for the Heisman Trophy. Then doesn't go in the first round of the draft, lands in the second round, had to overcome a lot of adversity from the start in the aftermath of Carson Wentz, then gets the keys to the franchise. First 2 years a starter makes the playoffs. Second year plays like an MVP, takes a team to a Super Bowl, where last year he was the best player on the field in that Super Bowl, outplaying the best quarterback in the sport right now in Patrick Mahomes. And then this year, loses an offensive coordinator. His leadership skills are called into question. I get it. He was dealing with the bone bruise. He was dealing with a finger injury as well. So he wasn't 100% healthy. But rarely anybody is 100% healthy this year. But now Jalen Hurts is back into that part where he was when he was at Alabama when he got benched. Like, what the heck is going to happen to Jalen Hurts? And how Jalen Hurts responds to this is going to ultimately determine, right, next year, his play next year, how much longer he'll be the quarterback of the Philadelphia Eagles. Because I know the dead cap is tough to move on from in the next 2 years, maybe even 3 years. But you follow up this crappy season with another season that is underwhelming, then you're playing for your job in 2026. So you got to get it right this year. And then you're playing for your job, in 2025. Pulse of that team last year. Right? Even the older guys that had won championships in Philadelphia, like Brandon Graham, Lane Johnson, Jason Kelce, they knew that baton was passed to Jalen Hurts last year. But this year, the leadership of Jalen Hurts and the guy that's the heartbeat of that locker room, he was never able to reel everyone back in. And it's a bad look. I want my quarterback to show emotion. You know, I love when Tom Brady's throwing a tablet and he's yelling at his offensive lineman. But Jalen Hurts had his teammates yelling at him. And he was just sitting on the side. I'm not saying people should enjoy losing, but he looked PO'd and he was sulking. And I think Jalen Hurts, it's weird to say it this way, but I think he speaks too much in cliches. And I don't get to see him, you know, all that much behind the scenes, right? We don't get to see him talking to his teammates. But that Alabama mold of ignore the noise and speaking cliches, it works. But when you're hit with adversity, you got to be a genuine leader. And you got to break from some of those cliches. And when he said that line about accountability, he's like, oh, I don't have a dictionary with me and things like that. And you couldn't even define what you were trying to say. It was sloppy. And I know that there were issues with the players and the coordinators. But there were moments where I think the players yelling at Hurts was those players like a Dallas Goedert, Devontae Smith, well-respected and know Hurts very well, especially Devontae Smith, where they were yelling at Hurts because they were saying, dude, let's go. Like, you are our leader. You got that title. You got that tag. You earned that last year. You got to rally the troops. And he was never able to do so. You know, entering next year, I think the Eagles are one of the more fascinating teams in the NFL. I really do. Because that's a team that has the talent to win it all. But they played like dog crap, and they quit in the final 7 weeks of the season. 1-6. And I don't think Sirianni, or I don't know if Sirianni will be back. Because I said after the game last night, he should be fired. I don't know if he will, though. Because Jeffrey Lurie, Howie Roseman, they like a puppet. But that puppet only takes you so far. And even though you like controlling Sirianni and the puppet strings, those players are now walking over your puppet. And that's a problem. So I think you need to bring in a coach that's going to stress accountability. I think you're going to bring in a coach that, yes, is a player's coach, but also is someone that's not going to get walked over. But also, you need Jalen Hurts to win back over that locker room. You need Jalen Hurts to go to a different level. And he needs to do everything in his power to find a way to get that locker room going back in his favor. Because right now, I think there's people questioning Jalen Hurts in that locker room. And you've seen it in the articles. Whether it's McManus, whether it's McClain, the two writers in Philadelphia, and there will be many more to follow this offseason. Because when you start 10-1 after going to a Super Bowl last year and losing the Super Bowl, and you finish the year 1-6, people want answers. And reporters will dig, players will point fingers, and people will talk to the media anonymously. And you'll have to probably take everything you read with a grain of salt, and everything that's said with a grain of salt without knowing who it's coming from. But it doesn't mean that those things aren't true. Because there was once an article that came out about Carson Wentz in Philadelphia. It's written by this guy, Joel Santaloquito, whatever his name was. And everyone thought the article was hogwash, including yours truly. I remember I mocked the article on the air when I was hosting at Sports Radio 94 WIP. Mocked it. Ended up being right. Leadership is an issue in Philadelphia. The coach is not the right guy, and we'll find out if the quarterback is as well. 855-212-4CBS, 855-212-4227. It is the Zach Gelb Show on CBS Sports Radio. You can follow us on social media at Zach Gelb, ZACHGELB. We'll update you some of the biggest stories in the world of sports. When we return with some audio, we'll get to the news brief when the Zach Gelb Show continues in 5 minutes.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. 4 minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Forty-five seconds remaining. Thirty seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
For your daily news brief, we get you caught up on the rumors, reports, and reconnaissance from the day in sports.
All righty, news brief time. Let's start it off with the Pittsburgh Steelers. They fall as expected yesterday to the Buffalo Bills. Najee Harris, he says that the Steelers need to make changes.
Coach T always tells me just play running back, and well, that's some little inside thing that we have too. But you know, if we want to elevate and get where we are and achieve those goals that we want, we have to change some in-house stuff, and you know what I mean, not no changes or not coach like that. It's just the rules that are in the building that, you know, we got to be more disciplined. We got to be more committed.
I think two things need to change with the Steelers. Number one, and this is very basic stuff, they need a quarterback. I don't think Kenny Pickett is the answer, and 3-4 games of Mason Rudolph, please. He could be fine for 2, 3, 4 games. He's not going to be your guy for the entirety of the regular season. The other thing, George Pickens, he's got to learn how to chill out a little bit. Like, I appreciate at times his energy, but then there are times when they won a game this year, he complained, and then he lost the game this year, and he complained. Like Pickens, who showed his worth down the stretch, he needs to channel those emotions and reel it in a little bit. He needs to just chill out a bit because this dude thinks he's Jerry Rice, and he ain't Jerry Rice. You got to prove a little bit more in this league. We all see the talent, but to have that daily grind of you don't know what mood George Pickens is going to be in is problematic. And I think George Pickens needs to study up on the word accountability a little bit. Here is George Pickens, though, of course. They lose the game. At the end of the game, right, the final sequence where the Steelers may have had a chance, there was some contact. I didn't think there was enough to throw a flag. They didn't get the flag, and now George Pickens calls out the refs after a loss to the Bills.
Like I said before, you can't play the Bills and the refs. You see what I mean? At the same time, when you out there and you trying to make the plays you are personally, and then they just taking away calls, throwing a clear pass over Miles Jack head, they call the PI, it's not catchable. So just politically, when guys go back and watch this game, watch the refs for sure in the game.
Yeah, I could watch the refs all game long, George. I'm not going to walk away from that game and said, oh, the Steelers lost because of the officiating. But that's a lack of accountability that George Pickens continues to display. You can't be blaming that game on the refs. The Eagles were embarrassing yesterday. Nothing will top that. But George Pickens going after the refs there and saying that's pretty much basically why they lost and we all need to watch the refs, please. Give me a break. Here is Antonio Pierce. He was doing an interview with KNTV in Las Vegas. He was wearing a Raiders jacket, so all righty, Stu. Maybe he knows something that we don't. He is technically still the interim head coach of the Raiders, but he has interviewed in other places. And listen to this audio, and let's hear the takeaway from it.
How am I in this opportunity, right? How is Antonio Pierce? Well, it's because of a gentleman like Martin Luther King and people before me. And then you even look at our organization, Art Shell, first black African-American head coach in Raiders history. So it's a dream. I don't want to pinch myself yet until it becomes official and we put a stamp on this bad boy, but very humbled and honored.
So a lot of people hear that and they go, oh, until it becomes official, it's maybe hush, hush, wink, wink. I was told I'm getting the job. I don't know about you, Stu. I didn't have that takeaway. And I know everyone's trying to live in this gotcha society. Oh, he just revealed he's the next head coach of the Raiders. I do believe that's what's going to happen, but I don't think he's been told that. I think he was just talking, confidently, as he should. He should think he should get the job, right? The players are all coming to bat for him, but since the players still have to go to bat for him, doesn't mean he's been given the job, because then he would tell Max Crosby, hey, you don't have to threaten a trade. I'm going to be your head coach next year. I think he was talking about there, Stu, if he becomes the coach of the Raiders, but pinching himself, and he'll realize it's not a dream and it's a reality and things like that. That's where he was coming from.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that's exactly what you said. It's not that he actually got the job, but he thinks he has a good chance at it, so when it's official.
When do you start to get worried that he doesn't get the job?
Oh, I mean, that's a good question. I guess maybe another week. I still feel pretty good, but I would say around maybe this time next week, I would be like, all right, what's Mark Davis thinking here?
Because the one team that got rid of their coach and already has hired the replacement was the Patriots. Now, Gerard Mayo was on staff. I guess he had some stipulation or clause in his contract, a succession plan, whatever they worded it. That's similar to what Antonio Pierce is dealing with. Like, I get he doesn't have the clause in his contract, but he was the interim head coach, so you know everything about him. He was in your facility. It shouldn't take, if we're still sitting here Tuesday of next week and he's not officially been named the head coach, then I start to wonder, what the heck is really going on? Here is Chris Greer, Dolphins general manager, on Tua's future with the Miami Dolphins.
Yeah, no, we've had conversations, like we said, we wouldn't talk with throughout the season in terms of contract stuff, but we've stayed in touch with his agent. Had good conversations throughout the year. Never talking about money or anything, just good conversations about where he is and So the goal is to have him here long-term playing at a high level. So, that's always the goal, and we'll continue and we'll communicate with him through the offseason here.
Yeah, that should be the goal. Like a lot of people when the New Year's start, they go, I want to go lose 15, 20 pounds. That could be your goal, but if you don't actually go to the gym and you don't eat healthier, you're not going to lose 15, 20 pounds. So you could say the goal is to have Tua as your long-term quarterback and have him there, but if you don't give him a contract extension this year, when he's entering the 5th and final year of his deal because of the 5th-year option that's been employed being a rookie contract, it's telling everyone else he's playing for his job this year. And let me be abundantly clear, that should be the only decision the Dolphins make. The decision should be to not extend Tua Tagovailoa right now. I need to see more from Tua before I reward him with a 4 or 5 year deal where you're paying him $45 or $50 million a season. Make him go show it 2 years in a row that he could be a good quarterback in this league. And you don't have to pay him right now just because his contract is a year away from being up. Draymond Green back from his suspension, scored 7 points off the bench. Here's Draymond Green after the Warriors did lose last night.
It's very urgent because I've cost my team enough. I've cost this organization enough, and so it's not a time for me to just come back and be like, all right, I'm going to take my time and get back when I can. No, like you caused this yourself. And so you don't get the grace.
Well, the only thing is, if you got, did he get rushed back too soon? He's at 15, 16 games, whatever it was. Does anyone think having that time off that it's going to humble Draymond Green and he's now going to be a different person? I don't. I guess he was all fed up with the conversation about him and he was threatening retirement, and then that story goes that Adam Silver talked him out of it. Did he really learn anything? Because it's easy for me to seem remorseful. It's easy for me to apologize and say I did X, Y, and Z wrong. But will there be another kerfuffle with Draymond Green and someone else this year? I'm going to just bet on the side that something else will happen from now until the end of the Warrior season with Draymond Green. I can't give this guy the benefit of the doubt. Here is Nick Sirianni, the biggest story of the day. The Eagles, season coming to an end. 1-6 after starting 10-1. Yikes. You finished the season with only 11 wins, and you go home to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. As you go down to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers as they annihilated you in the football game and the Eagles quit. Now Nick Sirianni's on the hot seat. Nick Sirianni, if he's worried about his future with the EAGLES Eagles.
Again, there's a lot of guys in that locker room, all the guys in that locker room, every single one of them that put their heart and soul into this. I'm not worried about me. I'm not worried.
Yeah, you're not worried. But anyone that says they're not worried about their job status is worried. And it's such coaches speak. I'm only worried about the guys in this locker room, not about me. That's not humanly possible. When everyone's saying you should be fired today or after that game or down that stretch, for you not to be worried in some capacity as well. Here is Troy Aikman. He calls out the Eagles on their just terrible collapse.
We've been watching that for 6 or 7 weeks. It's been continuous. It's a defeated team, and they were when they came in. And there's been no life to this group, really, throughout the entire ballgame.
It's amazing. That was such a likable team last year. And that team just had elite team chemistry. And this year, even after a 10-1 start, it seemed like everybody just hated each other. Even when they were winning in Philadelphia, they were annoyed in Philadelphia this year. One more from Troy Aikman on the ESPN broadcast last night is issues in Philadelphia that are happening right now.
I know there's a difference between what players and coaches say and what they feel. And they said all the right things, but you could tell they weren't feeling it. And it was obvious when they came out here and took the field. So what happens then is you've got to re-energize a fan base, and to do that, typically there's got to be changes. What changes will that be? I don't know. Will it be Nick Sirianni? I'm not sure. I wouldn't be surprised if it is, but you cannot go into next season status quo.
Well, the offensive coordinator is extremely close with Jalen Hurts. The offensive coordinator is too predictable. They don't even really have a defensive coordinator because it was Sean Desai. Then they made it Matt Patricia. Both those guys won't be the DC next year. But the tackling was the biggest issue, in my opinion, with the Eagles defense. Now, on offense, I don't want to say it's just the play calling, and I do think it's a leadership problem too, but the play calling was terrible. Hugh Douglas was right. How many screen passes are you going to throw? Defenders are predicting it, they're laughing, and then it's 3rd and 2, you only need a few yards, and you go for the home run shot. let me just take you back. This is Nick Bosa, one of the preeminent defensive players in the NFL, the San Francisco 49ers. We know the Niners hate the Philadelphia Eagles. The Eagles hate the 49ers. This was from early December of 2023. Nick Bosa made it clear he figured out how to stop Jalen Hurts.
You see it on tape, though, and then obviously we put the blueprint out there. Hopefully Cowboys watch the tape. We made Jalen stay in the pocket and escape outside instead of those B gaps, and paid off. So, yeah, you just have to be disciplined and not give him that quick escape route where he could get to his guys quick.
You know what the most damning part about that is, Samter? They found out the secret, right? They found out the answers to the test before they took the test. And then he's like, oh, I'm going to leak it online for every other team. It shows you they don't fear the Eagles whatsoever. I actually respect Bosa. And remember when McCaffrey went on the Manning cast? He's like, oh, this play's going to happen with the Eagles. I get it. The 49ers kicked the crap out of the Eagles. But there was a chance at that time that they would see each other again in an NFC title game. And the 49ers are like, we don't care. We'll tell you the answers to the test. We'll tell the world the answers to the test. Dallas, we want you to beat them next week. We don't really respect you that much either. But here you go. Here are the answers to the test. It's actually a boss move by Bosa.
And maybe that means that Deebo Samuel was right in his rant about what would have happened had they not lost Brock Purdy in that game.
Well, I think it was a different team from last year to this year. Now you're just trying to get under my skin. Here's where Deebo was wrong.
I mean, yesterday was his birthday, so maybe.
Oh, happy birthday! Was it really?
Yeah, we'll give him a little birthday credit.
Happy birthday to you. You want me to sing for Deebo? The problem with Deebo was he said all those things, and then when finally someone in the media, yours truly, didn't want to just kiss his ass and do an interview like Torrey Smith wanted me to do with him, which was like, oh, Deebo, you're the greatest person in the world. Oh, Deebo, tell me your life story. Tell me this, tell me that. And you actually have some questions, and, I know Torrey Smith didn't listen to the first 4 minutes of the interview. I was trying to, have him tell his story and how he's going to bounce back this year, and Deebo just didn't want to talk, and then you hold someone accountable for what they say. Oh, yeah, then you just hang up the phone. So let's not give Deebo any victory laps for that exchange.
I mean, I'll give him like a half a lap.
Okay,
but
that's fine.
It's fun. So you brought up the Nick Bosa sound from early in December. So the reason why we put it on the sheet and why we mentioned it is because he was asked about it today.
Yeah, let's listen to
it. Basically, he was asked, do you regret releasing the blueprint now that the Eagles just got smashed and they've sucked since they played you?
And this is what Nick Bosa had to say.
Nick, you said that you guys kind of had the blueprint for stopping the Eagles' offense when you beat them. How do you feel about that now? You taking some credit for their early departure?
I actually saw the clip and I was like, damn, I probably shouldn't have said that. But it worked out pretty good.
You think he's on the same things that Delta 9 Brian are on, just wondering? That Nick Bosa sounds really, really chill, Samter.
I mean, he does live in California.
Yeah,
and,
the NFL doesn't care about marijuana anymore, so he sounds very, very chill.
None of the sports care about marijuana anymore, as they shouldn't, so, yeah.
He sounded like Cody in California, who used to call me on the weekend overnights, where he'd be like, Zach, I'm chilling like a villain, about to make some pork nachos. What's up, my man?
Now, one thing I will say, I know from a lot of high-level athletes, a lot of them will be very chill and cool and nice until it's time for the game to start, until they get between those lines, they get into that ring or whatever it is, and then they take all that energy that they've been kind of building up and they've been pushing down, and they let it all explode when it's game time. So maybe that's what Bosa does too.
Now,
or maybe not.
Chris Long has openly admitted he smokes pot now. And I remember there was one day in the locker room where there was a big controversy in a preseason game with the weight on the defender, on the quarterback, and that was a big topic of conversation just when it happened. And I asked Chris Long about it, expecting this great quote, and he goes, you know what? I'm just in a passive mood today, man. I'm just in a really passive mood. And I asked Chris Long, since he's open about maybe hitting a G-pen here or there now, I said, were you maybe partaking in those festivities that day? And he said he wasn't, but you're not wrong. There's a lot of people that are very chill in the world of sports, and then they get on their field, and then they turn into just these beasts and these just ridiculous forces. But, man, Nick Bosa sounded pretty chill to me there. I'm not going to assume anything, but you could use your own imagination. Update time. Let's get to Rich Ackerman.
CBS Sports Radio. Sports Flash.
While the speculation continues regarding the futures of Mike McCarthy and Nick Sirianni, Steelers head coach Mike Tomlin reportedly told his team the speculation about him stepping away is unfounded, that he'll be back as coach in 2024. One, Kelsey is looking for another Super Bowl ring. The other had his dreams for a second one ended last night as the end of the road for Jason Kelsey, with the Eagles Pro Bowl center reportedly telling his teammates he's retiring following last night's wild card loss. The 36-year-old had previously considered the thought before. He spent all 13 of his NFL seasons with the Eagles after being a sixth-round pick in 2011. The Saints have let go longtime assistant and offensive coordinator Pete Carmichael, who had been with the team as part of Sean Payton's original staff 18 years ago. Rams tight end Tyler Higbee suffered a torn ACL in their wild card loss on Sunday night. Arizona has reportedly hired San Jose State's Brent Brennan as its new head coach after Jed Fish left for Washington. Brennan was one of the finalists when Fish got the job a couple of years ago. In the NBA tonight, there are 3 games on the schedule, starting with the Sixers and world champion Nuggets in Philadelphia. I'm Rich Jacob.
Hey, this is JR. Let's hang out weeknights here on CBS Sports Radio for my show, the JR Sport Brief, 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific.
CBS Sports Radio.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. 1 minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Forty-five seconds remaining. Thirty seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
Hey, this is Howie. And this is Nick. From the Factory Boys. And you're listening to the Zach Gelb Show on CBS Sports Radio. And guess what? Zach is back. All right.
He's live. He's nationwide on CBS Sports Radio. This is the Zach Gelb Show.
All right, this is Zach Gelb Show on CBS Sports Radio. We'll wrap up the show talking about the Buffalo Bills and the future of Sean McDermott in just a second. With it feels like Mike McCarthy, playoff team, should be fired. Cowboys lose to the Packers. And it also feels like the Eagles, playoff team, just lost to the Buccaneers, should be fired as well with Nick Sirianni. Is McDermott safe if he does not beat Kansas City this weekend? We'll get to that in just a second. But since we have pretty much spent the entirety of this show on the embarrassing Eagles after they quit last night. And, I know I have Philadelphia roots, and people often confuse me for an Eagles fan. I don't dislike the Eagles, but I wouldn't say I'm a fan of the Philadelphia Eagles. But I'm just wondering, like, when your guys' team loses, and you guys have a bad defeat, and Stu, you could probably speak to this one the best. What's your go-to game ends, you feel just so deflated, you're down and out. Life feels like it's over. You need a pick-me-up. What's the comfort food for Stuart Kovacs that you go to try to uplift your spirits after a terrible Raiders loss?
And I guess been a lot of.
I guess if Stu actually did this, Stu would be like a fat pig, which he's not. But let's say you're jonesing for something good. What are you going for?
Especially if it's like a night game, like last night would have been like it was for the Eagles. Definitely like ice cream, chocolate ice cream, something very sweet.
Okay.
If it's an earlier, like, dinner time.
Is that soft serve ice cream or no?
No, just like from the freezer.
Okay.
So at that point, I don't really feel like leaving the house, so I'm going to be kind of lazy and just get the tub of ice cream. If it's earlier in the day, probably pizza. I think is the move.
Yeah, you could eat like 3 or 4 slices after your team loses. Samter, when you're, you used to have good experience on this before you stabbed the Jets in the back after they stabbed you in the back for all those years, and now you're a fan of the Kansas City. How about those Chiefs? What was your go-to comfort food whenever the Jets would break your little heart?
I mean, it wasn't even necessarily a comfort food. Just like on Sundays, I would have wings. And so when the Jets would break my heart, I would go with wings. But really the comfort was just alcohol. Basically, like the Jets would just ruin my life. And it's like straight to the beer, straight to the whiskey, straight to the wine, straight to the whatever. I mean, comfort food is nice, but like alcohol really helps.
My Uncle Gary, anytime the Patriots would lose, he would always scream to my Aunt Linda, "Linda! Get the Entenmann cookies!" And they would always serve the Entenmann cookies.
Yes.
And they come in that box, and they're a bunch of like 50 small cookies. That would be like throwing a piece of meat to like 4 wolves that haven't had anything to eat for about like 5 days. Those cookies would devour right away.
Life hack. Throw them in the microwave for like 5 or 10 seconds just to get them a little bit warm and gooey.
Yeah, I don't.
Heaven.
With the smaller cookies, I don't think you need to do that. Like, you get me a big gourmet cookie, different. I like to warm that up.
You don't need to. I can just eat an entire box of straight Entenmann's cookies. I get it. I'm just saying, every now and again, if you want something different, just throw them in there for a few seconds, and you're good.
Now, here's my appliance take of the day. I really don't need a microwave.
Well, hold on. We should make this a daily segment. Appliance take of the day. All right, today's blenders. Tomorrow, microwaves.
Well, I don't really use my microwave at all anymore. I have an air fryer now.
You're a sociopath.
No. You put those cookies in the air fryer. You'll thank me. And Stu,
yes,
do you agree with that, Stu?
Anything in an air fryer, it works.
But an air fryer is not going to make it mushy, right? It'll make it crunchy, I would imagine.
No, it heats it up. And I think it just tastes delicious.
Microwave is the way to go for so many things.
I sound like I was doing a Lucky Charms commercial there for a second. It's magically delicious. But serious. Microwave, the last time I used a microwave was like soup. If I'm heating up soup, like, you can't use that for an air fryer. But now, like, I got a pizza, 2 weeks ago for the Michigan game. We had a bunch of leftover pies. I put the pizza in the air fryer. Anytime you do, like, any leftover chicken in the air fryer, wings. I had, like, leftover wings from me and my buddies picking on out the other day. Put them right in the air fryer.
Well, you're not putting chicken or fish in a microwave.
Well, you never know. I live with some crazy people throughout.
Yeah, chicken and fish don't belong in a microwave. So that's fine for an air fryer, but like certain things, microwave. You got it. Like if you want it soft and mushy and soggy, certain things like cookies or whatever, that's a microwave. That's not an air fryer.
Well, Chip City, I was enjoying myself, let's say, on Saturday night, and I was craving a big glass of milk and cookie from Chip City. Had them Uber Eats that to my apartment. Cookie came. I'm like, this could be heated up a little bit. Put it in the air fryer. I was a satisfied customer. But my comfort food of choice when my team loses a game, I'm a sucker for soft serve ice cream. You get me like just vanilla soft serve ice cream. You put the cookie dough bites in there, the chocolate covered pretzels, the Oreo cookies crumbled up with some whipped cream. I'm a big old happy fat camper right there.
Here's the other question, though. Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts on soft serve or any ice cream in general in the winter? So I went I went on Sunday with my dad. We got Ralph's Ices, and it's delicious. But it was like 27 degrees, and I'm like, what the hell am I doing with my life?
I like Rita's better than Ralph's. They have this, I think it's called the gelati, where they do the ice.
With Pete Bellotti?
No. I think they call it a gelati, or it's not gelato, but I think they call it a gelati. I may be wrong on that, but that is funny. I could see Pete the Body Bellotti working at this place. Pete the Body Bellotti would be an elite ice cream scooper. There's no doubt about this. But you have like the water ice, and then they have soft serve in the middle, and then they put more ice on top at Rita's. Oh, that's some good stuff.
Does sound fantastic.
But I'm a soft serve guy. I prefer soft serve ice cream. I'm a big soft serve ice cream fan. Yeah.
It's like 25 degrees out. You're getting ice cream.
Yeah, I'll be the maniac that, like, once I'm in a chill mood like that and I'm craving ice cream, I will be the maniac with the ski cap, the sweatshirt, the shorts, and the sandals with the socks all the way high up, walking to go get the ice cream.
Now, when you say chill mood, do you mean like a Chris Long, Joey Bosa chill mood?
That's the way that you're inferring. I'm not inferring those things, okay? I'm just here to do the radio show. If you want to say I'm Mad Dog Russo popping a gummy here, let's relax a little bit. I'm just saying when I'm enjoying myself on my couch and I start to just randomly get hungry and just get very, very hungry. Yeah, you could see Zach Gelb in the streets like that.
Interesting. I look forward to seeing you in sweats and high socks. Hopefully you wear socks and sandals along with that whole thing as well.
Yes. No, I'm a big shorts in the winter guy. My dad is shorts 365
I bet you are.
too.
I can see you being like a mesh shorts in the winter guy.
But if it's in like public or going to an event that's different, like my dad will I'll take my dad to a Rangers game. It'll be 5 degrees outside. He shows up in the same sweatshirt and the shorts. I'm like, what the heck are you doing?
Good for him. Who cares what people think about you?
My mother deserves a medal. That's what I learned from that conversation. All righty. Big thanks to Hugh Douglas. Big thanks to Moist Mike, Stuart Kovacs, each and every one of you. We'll be back tomorrow on a busy Wednesday show. We'll see who else will be on the hot seat tomorrow. I guess we have someone on the hot seat each and every day. But we out. Bye-bye. We'll back tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific. Zach Gelb Show. Peace.